Check one, check two. All right, I think we are good to go. Let me turn down the music here. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, or morning, or evening, depending upon where you are, I suppose. What's going on? Thank you guys for being here. We're just going to do a sound check and a mic check and everything real quick. And we will get this party started. Jack, can you just say something real quick, please? Didn't pick that up, so.
And talk forever and ever. And
okay, I think you're good.
All right.
Ellesmere, your turn.
Yo, what would you like me to talk about? I could yap for years, or I could just say like 5 words.
You're good, man. I think I need to turn you up just a little bit.
I can also lean in more.
No, you're fine. You're fine. All right, Meg, your turn.
You'll probably need to turn me up. I've been told that I'm quiet.
So, fun fact about Meg, her camera's actually sideways in Discord, so I had to turn it in OBS. But I would pull it up on screen, but that just might lead to complications and issues. But it was so funny. We were talking for like half an hour before the show, and she's just 100 or 90 degrees turned to the side. So it's weird seeing you actually up right now. It's odd.
Yeah.
But I think we are good to go. All right, you guys should be able to see them, hear them, see me, hear me. I think we are ready to rock and roll. Any questions, comments, concerns before we begin, lady and gentlemen?
Nope.
Cool, man.
I don't think so.
All right. Let's do this. Folks, welcome back to the next episode and whatever the heck this podcast name is. I'm actually going to talk about that here in a second too, but we're going to get the ball rolling. We have literally, and I'm not just saying this because they're kind enough to be here today, we have literally 3 of the best healers in the game with us today, and we're going to be picking their brains and asking them a billion different questions about healing at midnight and whatnot. But here we are. We are going to be shifting from damage, as we have the past couple of episodes, to healing, and I'm excited. We're going to be talking about what's changing, what's improving, maybe some excitement in the air about healing at midnight. Who knows? These guys have the right idea. They have the opinions that matter in this case. So we're going to start by introducing everyone, or rather we're going to have them introduce themselves, and we're going to start with Mr. Automatic Jack. You guys might have heard of him before. He's been playing the game for a long time, doing a lot of things related to Priest, among many others. Other than, I guess, Druid? Do you not play Druid? Is that right?
I've been playing Druid more, but that was like the one that I would like not play for the longest time. But in a Dragonflight, I did like a 0 to Hero series with it, with like no add-ons. Recently, I did like an Undercover series pretty quick for it to get all like 12s done. So, but I play everything. Main Priest for over a decade, something along those lines. Commentated Race to World First, commentated all kinds of esports stuff, and make lots of videos.
Yeah, you do. I just noticed you're in your new apartment, right?
Yeah, I moved like a month ago. I still got some more stuff I gotta set up, but the posters are getting there at least.
Nice. I count 4. It's a good start.
Yeah, well, I have like 40 of them or something ridiculous, but I'm trying to like put up less, so I have like less 2 more that I ordered. So it'll be like 6, and then I need to get a bookshelf. So there's like some home decor.
Thank you so much for being here, man. Real quick, for those of you who don't know, of course, our names underneath our webcams. That's everyone's Twitch location on Twitch, and in the YouTube description below, you'll find Twitter links, YouTube links, all that stuff. Please, I'm going to say this multiple times in the show. Follow these guys, subscribe to these guys, listen to these guys. They're kind of good at the game. Ellesmere, speaking of being good at the game, thanks for being here today, man. Holy Paladin Extraordinaire. Wingsup.com, is that correct? Is that the right URL?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Tell everyone what you're about,
At least for now.
Oh, what do you mean at least for now? What does that mean?
I don't know. We'll see how HPAL shapes up in midnight.
Ooh.
I'll try to remain optimistic.
I'll remain optimistic for you. We have a lot to talk about with HPAL. My God. All right, tell everyone who the heck you are, what you're about, what's going on, man.
I'm Ellesmere, and I play a lot of Holy Pally, except in the last 2 weeks where I've been playing a lot of Vigor and Fellowship. I love Mythic Plus. That's like my favorite thing in WoW, but I'm also going to become a world-renowned house builder come midnight. Very excited for that.
Oh yeah, my
don't know
wife...
if I can rival Meg's cows though.
I've been loving watching your Twitters all week, and every day there's a new cow tweet from Meg. It's ridiculous. And speaking of Meg Meg, thank you for being here. We were talking a lot before the show. You seem to be an extremely pleasant person with a great disposition. Introduce yourselves. I think people are going to really like you today. What's going on, Meg?
Thank you. My name is Megasett, or Meg is usually just what I end up going by. I like posting cows on Twitter, but my job is Mythic Plus, usually as a Mistweaver. I've been experimenting with Windwalker a little bit, but neither of them are particularly stellar at the moment. So mostly Mistweaver, mostly keys, but I do raid as well.
Yeah, and you've been playing Mistweaver, specifically Mistweaver, for the past few years. Is that correct?
Yeah, consistently since Shadowlands, early Shadowlands.
And you run the website Way of the Crane, correct?
Yes, yeah.
All right.
And
That's
the guide and all the fun stuff.
Right. So Wings is up, Way of the Crane. Make sure you guys go check out those websites if you want to know about HPAL and Mistweaver. But thank you guys again for being here. We're going to start a little icebreaker, as any good show does, of course. And we're going to ask you guys, Jack, I'm starting with you. I want to know one boss, one dungeon, perfectly it captures what you love or even hate about healing. What springs to mind?
Does it have to be a dungeon boss or it could be a raid boss?
Man, it can be whatever the heck you want. You're healing everything, so dungeons, raids, whatever.
Oh man, one of my favorite fights to heal of all time. Probably N'Zoth would be probably pretty high on my list. One of the best fights, I think. I remember in PTR for N'Zoth, there was a moment where the boss was like turned 90 degrees and you would like fall down into the platform and stuff on accident. And you would see like the underside of N'Zoth. But there are a whole bunch of like weird things going on with it in testing, but it dealt like no damage in PTR, and they like quadrupled the rot damage, the ticking damage of the fight, and it was a constant attrition battle to heal through it. Made it one of my favorite fights to heal of all time. Really cool, just like epic looking boss, lots to do. And just a lot of different ways that you got like rewarded for like good positioning too. Because I think that's always a struggle on a lot of boss fights playing priest, is like, how do you position yourself properly, not have to rely on other people for mobility like you have to on like Dimensius, for example. It's just a fun boss, fun to heal, lots of constant damage to heal up.
I was playing, I'm sorry, I have to talk about DPS for a quick second. I was playing Hunter during Mythic N'Zoth, and I remember specifically having to place my pets at locations for maximum damage. That fight brings back a lot of good memories for me too. Meg, I'm shifting to you. Ellesmere, I'll get you. Don't worry, man. Don't worry. Meg, favorite raid encounter, dungeon encounter, whatever it may be for healing, or the one you hate the most as well, whatever you want.
There's plenty that I hate. There's probably too many to go over. I think my favorite recently was the last boss of Galakrond's Fall.
Oh, wow.
Partially because it was, healing the NPC was kind of like not the best, because I know that the UI doesn't really give you any tools for that. But I did like, specifically because Mistweaver could abuse our tier set at the time through the NPC, and it allowed for creativity. And that's part of what I like about healing in general. So
yeah,
it was nice to be able to take advantage of that.
UI not giving you what you need. Oh, we might circle back around to that in a few minutes. We may. Ellesmere, give me something you love, something you hate about healing, specific encounter. What springs to mind?
My favorite encounter healing was probably second to last boss of Sepulchre. I don't remember what the name of it was.
Ragalon?
But yeah, Ragalon. The target selection on that fight was immensely important, and it really separated healers in like cutting edge Mythic, when you knew exactly, like, every single global you had to pick the right person to heal. And that's my favorite thing about healing is target selection, which is part of the reason I'm so like against like Avenging Crusader builds for HPAL and stuff like that, is just because I love target selection as a healer, and that fight was kind of like the pinnacle of target selection in cutting edge environments, at least from what I remember. But that's just from a healer perspective. Mechanically, it's probably like some fight in Black Rock Foundry, because that raid was just so amazing. Or Nighthold, yes. One or the other.
Oh my goodness. I have so many good memories of BRF. Oof. Go ahead.
Were you playing Pally, Ellesmere, for Ragalon? Yes. Holy Priest? Okay.
No, I was Pally.
Okay, we had 3 Holy Priests with flash concentration on that fight.
Holy.
Lot of target selection, lots of it.
That is sick.
Yep.
Real quick for chat, as you guys as you jump in, feel free to sprinkle in any questions you want me to ask these guys. Use the command question followed by your actual question. It'll pop up on my end, and if we have time, if it makes sense, I'll happily ask them. I'll be mentioning that throughout the show. No big plans for after show today, by the way. I might just hang around for a little bit. My wife was going to sit down, but she actually wound up getting busy with our daughter, going to a birthday party. So you're just stuck with me today. Apologies. But, and real quick, the podcast, as mentioned, still does not have a name. I've had multiple people drop names, Discord, Twitter, YouTube comments. A few of the highlights, and I don't think I'm going to name them any of these, would be like my favorite WoW podcast or the best WoW podcast. That way, anytime Google's the best WoW podcast, mine would pop up. That's a top contender. Someone mentioned, wow, that's brutal. Not bad. My favorite, and I would never name it this, is the Potty B instead of the Potty C. That's hilarious. There's the Brutally Honest podcast, the Brutal Breakdown, but still no name locked down yet. So if you guys have any recommendations on podcast names, leave a comment below. All right, we're going to be jumping right into the first big topic, the state of healing in Midnight. And we're going to be starting with Meg. Meg over here. I want to know, Meg, in your mind, what immediately stands out compared to healing and in relation to comparing it to the War Within, the War Within's philosophy on healing? Is there different levels of encounter damage? Is there different class feel? All of the above, I suspect. What jumps out to you?
A bit of all the above. We have done the we're slowing down healing song and dance like 3 times now, I think, and we always end up right back where we are now in the War Within, where it's just super jumpy health bars and you're pretty reliant on DPS using their defenses, and it's like kind of not as bad as it has been in the past, but one shot or near one shot area where there's only so much you can do as a healer. But again, I think they said it like 3 times total of the we're trying to slow down healing and make it less jumpy. So do I agree that that's something that should happen? Yeah. Do I think that it's going to last very long? Probably not.
Right. I mean, that's the question that springs to my mind. As you've already established, this is the same song and dance, right? Like, things speed up as the expansion unfolds, and then we try to scale it back and slow it down, or Blizzard does, I should say. Is there, I mean, again, not that any of us are game developers to my knowledge, but do you think there's a better way? Is there something else that could be done to make healing less spiky, less jumpy as the expansion unfolds? Anyone have a response to that? Jack, Ellesmere?
I think this is all part of sort of the cycle that happens over time, because healing isn't on an island. Basically, when it comes to like their class design, it goes like hand in hand with how they're increasing everybody's power. But it's a lot more difficult with healing, because if damage dealers are more powerful, then you can just make the mob HP larger or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
For healers, our strength is relative to how quickly we can push a health bar up. And so the class designers design us to be, faster, slower to push up a health bar. And counter designers look at how quickly we can top off a health bar. Then they make the damage spikier. And so, like, yeah, it is the same old song and dance, but it goes hand in hand with them getting rid of borrowed power. And instead, we're back to where we were like a decade ago, basically, where we're approaching our like Warlords of Draenor moment, where they're doing a whole bunch of pruning, because back in Mist of Pandaria, there was a crazy amount of bloat, crazy amount of cooldowns, player power, Dispriest at the end of Mist of Pandaria. You could basically shield the entire raid, and then a big damage event would go out, and health bars would not move. They just like, their shields were so powerful. And that plus like Holy Pally Illuminated Healing, which was their old mastery, which made absorbs. Disc Priest's crit made absorbs. So like you didn't see health bars jump that much at that height of power because so many absorption effects were in the mix. But basically going into WoD, they did a whole bunch of pruning and massively slowed things down. Since we're not in the borrowed power stage, we're kind of going back into the vicious cycle stage where players get really powerful. There's a lot of bloat, like Dragonflight with the new talents, into War Within with the hero talents. We're like ultra powerful. Now they have to prune. And that's what they're kind of doing in Midnight. So they're kind of just attacking a bunch of the symptoms. And I don't think, unless they go back to like borrowed power, I think we're just going to be in a vicious cycle of like power creep the classes, then prune the classes, power creep the classes, then prune the classes.
Ellesmere, do you think that would you call these changes being implemented in Midnight, the stuff that we're talking about the past couple minutes, do you think this is more refinement or reinvention? Is there like some kind of clear signal or direction that Blizzard's taking things in?
It's definitely more refinement. But it's a bit of both, right? Because in order to prune classes so significantly, you can't just like cut stuff out and then that's it and then you're just like
Right.
good. You have to also reinvent it so that it works well and flows well and there's a good feel to the specs and to combat in general with less buttons being pressed and with you know more minimalistic rotations, which I think is absolutely possible. And honestly I don't really get the whole fear and outrage over class pruning because I do think that there's a ton of bloat in this game. And I do think that specs will still have plenty of skill expression and plenty of um, unique interactions and stuff that you'll have to look for and ways to min-max your rotations and stuff like that. Even with all the pruning. So I do think that there's a bit of an overreaction from the community from that. Although that's also to be expected, right? Because everybody did the same thing back in WAD. You know, everybody reacted the same way. And so there's always going to be pushback when they do stuff like this. Obviously enhanced with all the tinfoil hat conspiracy theories on console gaming and stuff like that. But I think that overall this will be like the class pruning is something that had to happen. Do I agree with all the ways that they are pruning the specs? Absolutely not. I do think that they're making mistakes for a lot of specs, but the general philosophy I think is correct.
Yeah,
I was going to jump in on the healer interrupt
Please.
thing, Ellesmere. I was like, oh, glad you're fine with the healer interrupts being gone.
Well, like I said, not everything I'm a big fan of.
Yeah.
While you were talking, Ellesmere, I pulled up that something that looks like Red X303 on YouTube made this little infographic sheet about a month ago. And Jack, I'm looking at it here, and I'm seeing a bunch of red X's across a bunch of skills, abilities, talents from Holy Priest specifically. And we're talking about pruning. That's why I pulled this up. Why is Holy Priest apparently losing everything? This is a lot of stuff. What is this?
So a lot of the pruning getting done just in general are like paring down a lot of active abilities which didn't have much of a place. So on the graphic, you know, you see Renew gets removed, Heal gets removed. So Renew, for the last time that Renew was worth casting was Warlords of Draenor. And then from Warlords of Draenor to present day, they had to make a specific talent called Empowered Renew to actually make it worth casting. But ever since that, it was an active button that was just not worth the GCD, and it was like a total noob trap. So they got rid of that talent, and they just made all the Renew healing passive. So like they kind of got rid of a button that, in most cases, you should not have been pressing anyway until they had added that Empowered Renew. With a lot of specs, they got rid of extra single target heals. They got rid of, was it Healing Surge, but they kept Healing Wave. So they got rid of Heal for Holy Priest, but kept like Flash Heal. And it's just kind of like extra button that didn't really do much. Power Word Life was like a strong heal, but only if somebody's really low HP. And that was like a tough one to time. Shadow Fiend, Shadow Word Pain, Divine Star. They made Halo only for Archon. They just pared down a bunch of abilities that were very situational in terms of when you could actually utilize them. One that was like actually a big loss was like Symbol of Hope. But I think what happens with pruning for everybody is there's probably, I don't know, over 50% of the pruning, a lot of people will be like, yeah, I didn't need this, I didn't need that. And then there's always going to be at least one or two things that people are going to miss. And I'm kind of fine with that. You know, obviously losing Symbol sucks, but at the same time, I'm like, it's worth it if everybody is also kind of losing certain things or have to give up certain abilities just to kind of slow the overall environment down. Because what Symbol did was it gave you your personal defensives back. The better your personal defensives are, the more they're going to make tons of spike damage to force you to use those abilities. So I think it kind of helps the overall like macro environment of healing by having less tools for encounter designers to have to design the game around.
To deal with. Yeah, Meg, I'm looking at the infographic here, and it looks like you're losing Crackling Jade Lightning. Is it Chi Burst? Is that what that is? That purple icon?
Chi Burst, yeah.
And then what's that first one that I don't remember what that is? Enveloping Mist?
That one's Expel Harm.
Okay,
And we
expel
didn't
harm.
lose Crackling Jade. We lost the talent that made it a cooldown that we were actually
Gotcha.
talking about before
The
this.
one
So
where
that
yeah, okay,
has been
gotcha.
reworked.
Gotcha. So it looks like Mistweaver didn't get hit hard at all, but I'm going to speak somewhat ignorantly here. Just a real quick recap for everyone. I came back to the game about 2 months ago. I've decided to main a healer going into midnight. I've been playing all 6 classes. I find Mistweaver to be extremely easy to jump into. I'm not going to say it's simple. That's not what I mean to imply whatsoever. But I was like, okay, I can just punch and kick, and then I vivify, and I do this and I do that, and it just kind of felt very very enjoyable and easy to get the basics under control. Do you think that's why they've been pruned so little, is because it's just, okay, let's just get in there and start punching and kicking, and the rest can just be figured out as you go?
We got so not everything is listed there. We did get a lot of significant changes. The
Okay.
active abilities that we lost were Chi Burst, which was pretty much only used to reset Jadefire Stomp, which has the passive or the active has been removed, but it works through a new talent called Emperor's Elixir, which when you use your Thunder Focus Tea with Rising Sun Kick, it'll spit out a Jadefire Stomp. So it's not like a stand in it and dance around the visual anymore. It's just
Okay.
it does damage, it does healing. That's it. The things that we
Gotcha.
lost, like Expel Harm, we lost Diffuse Magic as well. That's not on there. But I find those to be more defensive pruning, which everyone got, versus like actual spell pruning. Because Expel Harm was just a large self heal or a shield if used with Thunder Focus Tea, and then Diffuse is gone as well. So we didn't lose a ton. I think we actually got off pretty easy on the whole pruning thing, and I expected to see more disappear from us because we do have a lot of buttons.
I was about to say, do you want more to be pruned?
No, I don't. I'm pretty
held my
happy with
breath.
where we're at.
I appreciate the pause. That was good.
Yeah, I like the amount of buttons that we have. I don't feel like getting rid of any of them would benefit the spec.
Sure.
Like we have to pick between Shaylens and we have to pick between Vivify, but that seems pretty clearly split between Vivify being your raid button and Shaylen's gift being your key button, just because of the target scaling that each of them have. So that's kind of been our tuning knob that we've been given to help make Vivify less terrible, because it's not pressed in live right now.
Gotcha.
Not really in
Ellesmere,
keys, so
is this Blessing of Seasons? Is that correct, Ellesmere? Is that the one I see being pruned, or one of the ones I see being pruned?
Correct.
Is that good or bad in your opinion? Because I find myself never using it because I'm just so new to the spec right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, I don't even know why that got added to talents in the first place. Nobody liked that button. That was like everyone's least favorite covenant. And I was pretty shocked when I saw the weird thing. They added that, and they added Of Dusk and Dawn, which were like the least favorite legendary and the least favorite covenant. And they're like, let's make these talents the capstones. And I was like, okay. And it didn't work out great. And so I'm glad to see that gone. And I'm actually glad to see Of Dusk and Dawn completely gone in its current form. So good changes on that front.
Good. Yeah, I'm again super new to Jack. I was playing Holy Priest earlier this week, and I had such a hard time with it for some reason, and I just swapped a disc, and I haven't jumped into it yet. But I'm not good at anything as of now. But I find myself really enjoying Holy Paladin and Mistweaver Monk. And Priest, I just haven't found my footing yet, man. What do you think, disc or Holy for a newbie?
Definitely Holy. With the changes they're making, a lot of well, you gotta read better guides, I guess. Guide writers got to do a better job for you, make it easier. They've done a really good job, I think, with Holy Priests for the changes of like folding a lot of abilities into each other and kind of combining a lot of effects. So and that's one thing I like broadly with a lot of the pruning that they've done is like you might have to press like 2 buttons in like one after another to use your abilities in War Within, but now you just press 1 and it does the exact same thing. So it's a lot of like not only pruning for less abilities, but also just kind of streamlining. And Holy Priest is like very streamlined going into midnight. And they also added some talents that are really nice where you can give up Sanctify, your AoE holy word, And in return, your single target Holy Word does more healing and also cleaves 4 allies. So it's like a really good 5-man buff to allow you to just improve your single target healing.
Meg, you had mentioned the UI earlier, and this will not be the only time we talk about it, but do you think that any of the new visuals that you're aware of so far, anything related to the UI with it being cleaned up and trimmed back, do you think that's going to make healing clearer or just simpler or something else altogether? Harder?
It makes it different, that's for sure. I don't know if simple is necessarily better. I do think that it's simpler, but I don't know if that's going to benefit us in the long run. There's a lot of things that I like to see on frames, and it may be more than I think most people like to see,
Mhm.
but being able to tell, okay, this guy's got, this defensive up because I have on my frames, I have all of the defenses for the DPS. It's like, okay, even if he has dwarf up, like I know that I have to worry about him less. But now, if I can't see all of those things, I'm just going to be constantly babysitting everyone a lot harder,
Yeah.
which spreads my resources thinner depending on how the damage is tuned. So maybe a little more unclear but simpler, but also I don't know if either of those are actually beneficial in this case.
Gotcha. Ellesmere, I want your early read as to the best of your ability on Blizzard's philosophy for healer agency going into Midnight. Do you think that we need or that we'll have more personal DPS? Is that something we should even be worried about or focused on? Do you think we should be pure support, somewhere in between? Where do you think we're going to land, and what do you think matters?
Well, I'm gonna give you two answers. I'm gonna give you the answer
All right.
of what Blizzard wants, or at least appears to want, based on the changes that they're making, and I'll give you what I want. What Blizzard wants is, at least from the changes, it appears that they are interested in healers just exclusively showcasing their agency through healing throughput. That seems to be their main core focus. They want us less focus on like team stuff like interrupts and AoE stops and stuff like that. At least in a Mythic Plus environment. And they want us less focused on damage. They want us to basically just be focused on healing. And that is something that I know there is an audience for. That audience just isn't me. And I might be the minority here. I try to get a pretty well-rounded information from my community through sources, whether it's casual players or but obviously it can be hard to do that as somebody who doesn't pug a lot and somebody who plays a lot. Mostly in the really high-end scene, my views can be somewhat limited there. From my standpoint, obviously I'm someone who's always really liked showcasing my talents as a healer in ways besides healing throughput. For me, if I'm just looking to showcase my talents for healing throughput, I will raid, because that's what raiding is. Raiding's all about, maximizing your HPS, trying to, show off your healing as much as possible. And for me, Mythic Plus was supposed to be something different. It's supposed to be something where you got to showcase other talents, whether it's damage, helping your team through interrupts, stops, coordinating defensives, proactive healing based on targeted spells, stuff like that. And all that stuff, we discussed, or at least Jack mentioned earlier, my crusade against the removal of healer interrupts. But I did want to clarify something, which is that I'm not actually against the removal of healer interrupts specifically. My problem was that it was a part of a series of changes that Blizzard was making that was removing overall healer agency in Mythic Plus outside of just raw healing throughput. That meaning, not only were we having our interrupts removed, but we were also losing a lot of utility. We're also being gutted in terms of our damage relative to previous expansions. So we're not going to really do damage. We're not really going to help with kicks or utility that as much as we have in the past. And we're also losing the ability to coordinate defenses because we can't track that anymore. And we're also going to have a much harder time playing proactively in terms of targeted spells because we're no longer going to know who's targeted by a spell unless we're staring at cast bars, which is actually something that Blizzard has specifically stated they do not want healers to do. That was part of their reasoning for why they removed kicks, was that they don't want healers to have to look at enemy cast bars. They want them looking at party frames. But if we're doing that, then we can't tell who's being targeted by a spell. And if that's true, then we can't play proactively the way that we have in the past. So it kind of conflicting stuff from Blizzard in terms of how they want healers to play and what they want us to be paying attention to and where they want our agency to lie. But yeah, it does appear that we're going to be moving in more of a strictly healing direction. And for me, that's not great.
You prefer that hands-on, get in there, I want to do as much as I can with what I have kind of a play style? Me too, for the record.
I just want to feel like I'm part of the team, and I don't want to feel like I'm playing my own mini game of just staring at party frames for 30 minutes, you know?
Yeah. What do they call that? Whack-a-mole healing? Is that what they call that? Is that right?
Yeah.
All you're doing is just staring at the bars?
Yeah, and to be clear, I do love that. Like I said earlier, Raglan being my favorite fight, my favorite thing's target selection. I love target selection, prio healing, triage healing, min-maxing, all that. That is like totally my wheelhouse of what I enjoy doing as a healer. But Mythic Plus was supposed to be about more than just raw healing, because again, that's what Raid's for. And so for me, I was really hoping to see more skill expression be brought back to healers in other ways going into Midnight. Obviously, my big preference would be via damage. You could get rid of my interrupts. If you buff healer damage significantly enough so that we're actually impactful in terms of min-maxing our damage, you could take away our interrupts. I don't care. But I just don't want all of our agency outside of raw healing throughput to be gutted.
Did you see in the dev notes this week they buffed healer damage by 20%?
I did, but 20% of 0 is still 0. So
right, I didn't get a chance to try it for myself, so that's why I was curious if you had seen, like, is that actually going to be substantial? Because we're just fighting questing mobs and stuff at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to tell, but if you were to obviously it's not. You can't really test it right now. There's not a great testable environment. But if you were to just add 20% of the damage that healers do currently in M+ to what we do, it would still be just nothing compared to a singular proc from a DPS on an AoE pack. They're just going to do the same amount of damage we would do for 5 straight minutes. So,
and that's one thing. Well, I think it's kind of interesting, at least with healing. Obviously, it's like an opinion, right, of what people prefer and what people enjoy. But I think that kind of stands out to me that I enjoy, especially in the War Within, of how they've tuned healer damage, where it has some value, and I could totally understand the argument of not enough value, but it's always going to be worse for you to min-max your damage than just to try to optimize keeping people alive. And maybe that like ratio is like too wide right now and not rewarding enough for when you can do damage. But conceptually, I like the concept of I need to do everything possible to keep my DPS alive, even if it means ruining my own. But at the same time, if I skillfully keep everybody healthy and skillfully keep everybody topped off, then I get to do some extra damage. Maybe it's just not rewarding enough right now, and I can definitely see that sort of argument, but I like that overall philosophy. Because when we were in like Shadowlands dungeons, it was like there's so little unavoidable damage that you had to heal that you spent enormous amounts of time just tunneling DPS. And like, I mean, that could be super satisfying, because that's another way you could express your skill. But then also, again, it's just an opinion, right? It moves away from like what I would think of like being a healer and keeping people healthy.
Absolutely. And don't get me wrong, I do not want Ashen Hollow back or anything like Ashen Hollow to exist. That is unhealthy for the game. There is no way healers should be doing that type of damage. That's not what I'm advocating for. My problem is that while I do hear what you're saying in terms of like healers should be able to healers should have to prioritize keeping their DPS alive, and shouldn't be, doing so much active damage that it rewards them to put their DPS in danger. However, the trade-off right now, like you're saying, it's just not enough, because when you can optimize your damage, it still is just completely meaningless. If I'm doing, if I optimize so well that I hit every single global perfect and am able to min-max my damage perfectly in a dungeon, I am still barely doing, the amount of damage that I optimize is about equivalent to, 5 seconds from a DPS player extra uptime. It's like it's so minimal on the scale of contribution to the key. You're saving maybe 2 seconds on the timer. I need like it's just there's no reward, there's no incentive to do it, and so I'm just left with like, okay, I'm just not even going to care about damage at all.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the philosophy that Blizzard wants, like I said. But for me, it's just frustrating to see that plus all the other healer agency being stripped away as well. So yeah.
Meg, what do you
I noticed
think?
that. Sorry, real quick. When you're talking about like having to keep an eye on the nameplates, I think it's so frustrating to your point that like you can see who's being targeted off the nameplate and watching it because built in with their new UI nameplates, you can see who's the target of like the bolt going off, but then they will refuse to allow you to see that on your raid frame. So you still have to have your eyes up, like you were saying, just to watch who's going to get targeted. Flick your eyes back down, find the person in the frame, just precast a heal or a shield or something.
And then it's like, okay, why not just give me a kick at that point? Because your whole logic for stripping us of our kicks was that we're not supposed to be watching that. But then when I ask them and I'm like, are we going to get some sort of targeted spells thing where you can like see on the frame? They say no. And so then I'm just like, okay, so what gives? Like, what do you want us to do? What are we supposed to look at?
Meg,
both
I
of
see
you
you're
guys use
chomping
your
at the bit,
frames?
Meg.
You guys both use your unit frames to see like targeted spells.
Yeah, sell.
Yes.
I use my plater.
Oh,
But
man.
I'm doing that.
You look at.
I look
wait,
at plater to see who's being casted on.
Mistweavers.
If I see two nameplates right next to each other that both say my name, I know I have to press something, right? Like
That's
it's much
true.
easier for me to see it that way.
But you can just see it off your
I
health
didn't.
bar.
But
So
that's a preference thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
but
I mean,
here,
But what I
this
want to
is-
look there and then I get hit by a frontal because I'm in melee all the time.
Yeah, but this is
You know?
again kind of what I've talked about before with people's brains working differently. Some people's
Mhm.
brains work really well one way and others work really well another way. So yours naturally works really well with looking at nameplates, whereas mine works really well looking at party frames and not having to split my vision like that. And part of the removal of add-ons and what the removal of all these things is doing is limiting the ways that people can process information and limiting the ways that people are able to interpret information in different ways. So while right now you're able to do it that way and I'm able to do it this way, in Midnight we're all going to have to do it one way. And that's going to significantly impact people whose brain doesn't process information the way that Blizzard dictates that you should be processing it.
Yeah, I know. I know they
yeah.
brought up the audio cues and the cooldown manager. I
Mhm.
hate audio cues.
Oh yeah.
Kendall, I love your stream. I have to mute it sometimes because you just have gunshot. Like it sounds like a war
No,
zone.
it's fair.
I can't
get
do
it.
it.
I
So I'm like, this is great, but I hate audio cues.
No,
So
I mean, I
I'm
get
not
it.
excited to see that.
Again, it's literally just people's brains processing information differently. And that's what I love about weak auras and about add-ons and stuff like that. And so yeah, I mean, for some people it's going to be great, and then for other people it's probably going to negatively impact them a lot.
Yeah, but just so you, not that anyone asked, but Meg, my brain works the exact same way yours does. And I think a lot of it stems from the fact that I come from a tank and a DPS background. I'm always looking at plater nameplates. And like literally, you said exactly how what I look at is if I see two casts aimed at a mage or myself or whatever, I know what to expect in that case. And not to say that I don't ever look at the party frames. Of course I do, but yeah, that's where I'm at too, Meg.
So
And I think it depends on the healer that you play too, because most of my healing is still coming from DPS.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm pressing DPS buttons 95% of the time and I still do no damage, but that's where my healing comes from.
Mm-hmm.
I also have like
also you've been playing
Go ahead.
Windwalker too, right, Meg?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Brutal, you came from playing a hunter and everything too.
Yep.
So it seems like we're just having healing design being based around what damage players are doing all the time. They're
That's
not
crazy.
letting healers actually design the game.
Oh my goodness, we're gonna dig a little deeper into how all of this affects us as we're playing our classes. We're gonna swap to a spec spotlight and class perspective portion of the show here. Jack, we're gonna start with you. I want to know, how well do you think priest design is coming together? Granted, we just hit beta, so I know we still have some iteration and whatnot, but do you think that the two healing specs are they feeling intentionally shaped Do you think that the broader class design is holding up right now, or do you think there's still a lot of work to be done for Holy and Disc?
I think Holy is really well designed. It hasn't really had too many deviations from like being the beginner healer, really straightforward, and how you're producing output and benefiting your holy words. So they folded together like a lot of different healing effects into each other. They pruned a lot of abilities that were really situational. They gave you some tools for 5 mans. They've historically had like really well balanced end talent nodes, like that final row of talents, the final 10 points. They're all like pretty well balanced. So I like most of what's going on with Holy Priest. The Apex talents kind of suck because they just give you fluff healing, like I call it. It's Cosmic Ripple, which is basically this little explosion of tiny healing for like 0.5% of your health bar or something like that, and it just triggers more tiny explosions. Doesn't feel that effective. Doesn't feel
Right.
that enjoyable to play with. So I don't really like that. Disc, they do these big posts where they kind of write out what their intentions are for the spec, and I like what they've written for what they want to do with Disc, but most of their talent changes don't seem to accomplish that goal. They want to make it easier to apply atonements to do huge healing in raids with the evangelism cooldown. But the way they've changed evangelism from just extending the duration of your atonements to now allowing you to spam radiance to apply atonements doesn't really make a lot of sense because your atonements are going to be falling off as you're applying new ones. So I like what they're talking about, and we can even talk about that a little later, Brutal.
Sure.
So I won't get too in depth on it.
No,
but
it's all good.
I like what they're talking about, but they haven't really executed on it yet for Disc.
Ellesmere, Holy Paladins, we talked about this just briefly earlier. I think it might have been before I even started recording the podcast, but Holy Paladins toolkit has changed so many times over the past few expansions over the years. Do you think that Midnight is stabilizing something? Are we gonna feel similar to the War Within, or to WoD, or to something else, or is it a whole new beast?
Not even close. It's it's an entirely new thing. Blizzard has this track record of HPAL design being a bit of a mess initially, then it gets cleaned up halfway through the expansion, and then at the end of the expansion, they start to really nail down what it should be. And this is what we've experienced in the War Within, where we got to a really good point right at the end of this expansion. And right now, HPAL playstyle is fantastic. It's really fun. You know, of course, it's not meta because we don't bring a raid buff. I could go on for that for 500 million years, but the current playstyle of HPAL is really, 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 really fun. And it sucks because they do have a bit of a habit of getting HPAL in a great spot and then taking it away. The same thing happened Dragonflight Season 2. HPAL's playstyle got really good, but it was a little overtuned, and instead of nerfing it in the right way, they kind of nerfed it in all the wrong ways. And that's what led to Season 3 and 4 of Dragonflight being pretty abysmal for HPAL in terms of playstyle and throughput. And then this expansion, it seems to be kind of the same trend where we're starting completely new again. They have stripped us of a lot of our core kit or adjusted the core kit extremely significantly. They have removed a lot of talents that are pretty beloved in the HBAL community and replaced them with passives, which has been frustrating. Most recent victim being Rising Sunlight, which is my personal favorite talent and has been for a long time.
What is that talent, real quick, just to be clear?
Rising Sunlight is whenever you Divine Toll or Wings your next Holy Shock or next few Holy Shocks cast multiple times. So it did this thing where it basically it turned these cooldowns into stronger cooldowns and then gave you really powerful spot healing or holy power generation depending on the way that you wanted to play it. It is a very diverse button or active ability that allowed a lot of interesting gameplay to and things that you could do with it. And they have replaced that with basically just a passive, your beacon targets get healed for 10% more when they're at lower health or something like that. I forget exactly what it is. But it's definitely been frustrating watching a lot of our kit get gutted and replaced with less engaging things, although that does seem to be a feature of Midnight for a lot of specs. I think that HPAL in general is in an okay spot. But I think its biggest problem right now is the CDR, the massive CDR jumps in our abilities. Basically, we have like a core kit. There's two things, that and then Holy Shock hitting like a wet noodle. That's its own problem. But the big frustration for me in terms of play style, regardless of tuning, is that two things. One, the CDR jumping is really rough because our Holy Shock and our Judgment are like our core kit, and they have added so much CDR to like, but not like a little bit of CDR per hit. It's like these massive spikes in CDR. So anytime that I Shield of the Righteous, I get 4 seconds off of my Holy Shock. But Holy Shock is only like a 6-second cooldown. So I press Holy Shock or I press Shield of the Righteous, and I just get like 75% of the cooldown of Holy Shock back, which is really awkward. And then Holy Shock does the same thing for Judgment. It takes like 3 seconds off, which is like half the duration of the Judgment. So like you're kind of just watching these cooldowns just jump all over your bars, where they're like, it can be hard to read which button you should be pressing next. And I think that that's going to be even worse for players who are less experienced with the spec, where, you know, they'll be like, okay, I'm going to press Holy Shock, and then I'm going to press this, but oh, my Judgment's up. I should be pressing that, you know, and it's just awkward with how much CDR they've baked into some of these. I think that the best solution for that would probably be giving Judgment 2 charges so that there is less waste. And it's a lot easier to manage that. But I also think that just reducing the cooldown of Judgment and Holy Shock in general, and then decreasing the amount of CDR that some of these talents are giving would work as well. And then the number 2 thing is just mana. HPAL is the only healer without a filler spell, which I talk about 24/7 whenever I'm on these podcasts, hoping, you know, that I'm not just screaming into the void and that someone will hear me eventually. But it's very frustrating being the only healer without a filler spell. And a filler spell is something like Smite for Priest, or Lightning Bolt or Chain Lightning for Shamans, or Wrath for Druids, or Cat Form, whatever it is. It is a spammable rotation filler that doesn't cost mana, that you can use to fill the gaps in your rotation or buy you time and make you feel like you're still doing something even when you're trying to conserve mana. And not only is HPAL the only healer without a filler spell, but we're also one of the only healers without an active mana return. We don't have a button that just gives us mana back. In fact, the only button that we did have that did that was Blessing of Seasons, which they removed. And again, I am a fan of Blessing of Seasons being removed. However, having our only active mana return button be removed is definitely not fun either. So I would love to see some form of mana management be brought in for HPAL, whether it's in the form of a filler spell, which they could turn Crusader Strike into, since they removed it. Instead, just make it a filler spell, please. Give me something, you know? Either that or give us an active mana return ability.
What do you think about Spirit returning?
Spirit return, like the stat?
Yeah.
What?
That wouldn't really solve the problem though, right? Because we'd still, in order, when we want to regen our mana, we literally have to AFK. Like that's all we can do.
I agree with the filler spell 100%.
Okay,
but like,
yeah.
I'm with you on that one. But that, in my opinion, don't you think that a lot of, you know, Holy Pally's problems, but also a lot of other healers are like Blizzard's expectations or their own tuning of how much mana you should consume, and that way they're like, oh well, like if you're casting, I don't know, more Holy Lights, you'll go in this period, or you go, you know, without casting Holy Lights in this period, and they kind of have their own tuning based on how they expect you to play. And in a lot of cases, Holy Pally's been like the worst, because you might have to save somebody's life and you burn your mana bar down and you just have to sit there AFK, right? I feel like bringing a stat back with Spirit then at least lets you have some control over, like, oh, I need more Spirit for this fight, I don't need any Spirit for that fight.
I do agree
that's at least what I enjoyed.
I do agree that that could work. I'm not a huge fan of having to sacrifice throughput in order to gain what should be something that I feel like should be like baseline in every healer's kit. If mana is going to be, you know, like personally, just remove mana. Like I'm sick of like mana is just,
I like mana.
Okay. some specs you like mana because you have a good way to manage it, right? There's a lot of specs that have great ways to manage it that I love. And obviously Meg is probably a massive fan of mana because monks have the best,
Oh, I
have
wish
always had the best, kit in terms of
I
mana management.
I like the state of Mistweaver's mana because I don't have to think about it. If they got rid
Exactly.
of mana for everyone, it would be
Yeah.
fine. Like
Boom.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't
Big
want Mist
fan.
to be the
Has no
limiting
mana.
factor.
Big fan. Yeah. So
Yeah, she
I mean
basically has
that's
no
my
mana
thing.
already.
I think
Pretty
that
much.
unless they can make it so that every healer has to play around mana in a meaningful way and like the same amount, then I don't think that mana should be a thing.
Yeah, that's
And
fair.
the reality is Blizzard has shown that they are not able to do that for many, many expansions. I do not remember the last time that healers have evenly had to care about mana. It had to be at least a decade ago.
Yeah, so we're kind of on like opposite sides of like the extreme, right? You're like, I think we both agree on the problem, but it's like on your side, it's like, well, if they're not going to be fair about it, let's not have mana at all. But I would much rather it get put onto the player to then go for spirit, because then you as the player have control over your mana regen, your mana returns as well as all in
I
advance.
would be
And one
okay with
thing,
that.
yeah, and like players, I think in WoW, especially when we look at like remix, they love the like passive optimization. Like, do you remember back in like MOP when they added like active mitigation to tanks and they had to actively think about like what buttons they pushed instead of just like I geared up and now I parry everything, right? Healers kind of had that with like spirit and like MOP especially, where like, oh, I just have the spirit, I'm fine on mana. And if I'm like a really good player, I could drop a ton of spirit and then I could, play better and then I could have more output stats. That's what I
Yeah.
always
Okay.
enjoyed.
So Spirit was before my time. I never really got to play with it. Would it not create an imbalance where you have HPAL as it is now and Mistweaver as it is now, where we could both grab the same amount of Spirit, but now I'm doing that much more healing because I can play more aggressively because I have Spirit?
Or
Whereas
I
all of
have
us
to
now just like
stack
at a
spirit.
baseline.
I have to stack spirit, and Meg doesn't have to run any spirit. And so Meg just gets a ton more throughput baseline because I'm having to stack spirit because my mana is so screwed. So like,
Yeah.
yes, spirit would solve that problem, but it would create more imbalances with throughput because healers with mana issues would have to sacrifice so much more of their stats and their throughput in order to pick that up. But again, I think we're on the same page in terms of like, we just
Problem.
want I don't care how it happens. I just want balance in terms of mana resources and tools and mana drain for healers. I don't, it's fine if one spec costs a ton of mana but has resources to counter that, and it's fine if one spec costs very little mana but has no resources to counter that, right? I mean, obviously the ideal would be if somewhere in the middle, where every spec does have a way to actively manage their mana and also doesn't have too much hemorrhaging mana issues one way or another. But right now, like, you look at HPAL, one of the things they did was they made Holy Light bomb heal so hard. So you can heal somebody with Holy Light for like 60% of their health, which is awesome. But you go in like 8 casts of it. It costs like 10% of your mana. It's unbelievable. And then we have no way of getting any mana back. So like players who are less skilled might accidentally press that once or twice and they are screwed for the whole fight. And then again, this is kind of talking about raid. And I think if we were to discuss M plus from an M plus or mana from an M plus standpoint, the issue is more out of combat. And the fact that I don't really care what mana drain is like, except that healers that drain a lot of mana have to then sit outside of combat and drink. And I think that out of combat mana generation needs to be jumped significantly in M plus to combat that issue, unless they're gonna, manage healer mana. But like, I see no problem why you can't just have mana regenerate an insane amount when you're out of combat.
I could see that
Weird.
being an issue in PvP.
Well, no, like I said, this
but-
would be an M plus only thing, right? You just have like
okay.
an aura in M plus.
You could also add mana to recuperate. I kind of don't like that it doesn't have mana.
True. I'd be down for that. That would work as well.
I am
Yeah.
so glad you guys are experts because half of this stuff I'm just smiling and nodding as I'm learning about healers and whatnot. By the way, this is amateur hour over here. I may or may not have forgotten to turn off notifications on certain things. So apologies, everyone.
Oops.
I'm going to go ahead and turn off notification sounds here. Okay, let's pull the... And we're back. All right, good deal. Like it never happened. Apologies for the DM notifications. I hope I didn't annoy anyone too much with that. Meg, we're gonna jump into a little monk question here, if you're okay with that. I want to know what your impression is as it stands, whether it be strictly with the War Within or going from War Within to Midnight. What's your impression of fist weaving versus the traditional healing builds in, again, as it stands or in the new environment?
The age-old question for Miss
Indeed.
Weaver. They each have their place. I think that lately we have seen a little bit more of a clearer distinction between fist weaving. I don't like calling it that because it is always recommended to use everything that you have in your kit, and that includes your melee abilities, like Sweep's melee range, all that fun stuff that I say every time.
Mm-hmm.
So like the Chi-Ji builds where you have right now Jade Fire Stomp, and you're playing Chi-Ji and you're playing Shaylin's Gift with whatever modifier talents you want, versus something that you would see in Raid where it's more Yu'lon and Vivify spam and kind of blanketing the raid, but you're not doing much damage conversion. The big distinctions there are Rushing Wind Kick, which is more for Raid, and Jade Fire Teachings, which is more for keys. So I don't think that either of them should cross over to the other form of content because it makes balancing really hard. Like we saw in Liberation of Undermine, we were playing Chi-Ji, we were playing Jade Empowerment, Jade Fire Teachings, where it's a very Mythic Plus type of build and you just DPS your whole way through and you did a lot of damage. And then that got nerfed and never fixed. But the in coming into Midnight, it feels much more intentional with Yu'lon being for Raid and Chi-Ji being for keys. And I think that a lot of the new talents that we've got have kind of driven that home a bit. And then, of course, you have PvP that you have to think about as well, where you do have fist weaving, because it's like actually a thing there, versus like the caster builds, they're using the Jade Empowerment with Yu'lon and everything, and use Rushing Wind Kick. So it's a nightmare to try to balance between all these different forms of content when you do have the melee healer issue, but also being melee in raid sucks, but also you don't have any conversion in raid. So it's like 7 different things to try to balance, and it sounds like a nightmare, but I think that we have pretty good changes coming into it right now. It's like, I know people want like Fistweaver to be a spec and Caster Monk to be a spec. I don't want to be Holy Priest and Dispriest. I just don't want to deal with 2 different healing specs because I think that would cause more issues.
Yeah.
Because I think one would always end up being better and you'd never get to play the other.
Jack, opinions? What is one better than the other most of the time?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of flip back and forth. It was actually kind of funny because this expansion, I was perfectly balanced between Holy and Disc. I played Holy for half a Narrowbar Palace, and then the other half we didn't have our Preservation Evoker, so I filled in as Disc for the last like 4 bosses or whatever it was. And then all of Undermine I was playing Disc, and then now all of Maniforge. Disc was like really bad. It's finally getting playable now, and I played Holy for progression there. So yeah, I mean, you kind of have to like just go with whatever Blizzard wants you to play in that expansion. You're like, yeah, here we go. That's one that we're going to be playing.
Can we circle back for a quick second, Jack, and talk about Atonement and how it's changing from Midnight? And before you even jump into that, can you explain to newbies like myself what Atonement even means and what it does and how you use it and all that that entails?
So Atonement is your damage turned into healing on your allies, and you have to mark your allies in advance with that buff before they can receive healing from your damage. And so in 5-mans and dungeons, it's really easy because you cast Powered Radiance and it applies to 5 players. In raids, at least at the moment, it's more complicated where you have to individually apply Atonement to 10 people using Powered Shield. The new ability coming up is called Plea. Maybe Flash Heals if you have procs for it. Apply that 10 to 10 different people. Then you hit your double Radiance. And currently you'd hit Evangelism, extend the duration of everything, and then deal damage. So you'd spend 10-15 seconds applying single target healing, and then you would spend 5 to 8 seconds doing damage to yield healing from all of those buffs. So it's a lot of like preemptive setup before damage to set up for a huge burst of healing.
And how is it changing between the War Within and Midnight?
Mainly, they're trying to make it so that evangelism, instead of extending the duration and rewarding you for applying all those atonements in advance, they're trying to make it so that it's a cooldown you can press every minute and a half and just blanket atonements on everybody.
Gotcha.
It's kind of inefficient right now because you could just hit evangelism and spam radiances for 8 seconds, but your atonements from radiance are only 10 seconds instead of the standard 15 seconds. They might be 14 seconds, I think, with Oracle, 13 seconds maybe. But still, you're having a lot of atonements falling off and expiring by the time that evangelism duration will end, and you're not really yielding the value that you want. So it's an inefficient way to do it right now. The talents just don't really work the way that they want them to, and so they got to kind of clean it up. But 5-man should be pretty unaffected so far.
Gotcha. Ellesmere, with your site, Wings is Up. Make sure you guys go check it out. All right. You have broken down what makes a good Holy Paladin versus a great Holy Paladin in terms of gameplay, but I want you to kind of articulate to the best of your ability what traits separate the top 1%, like the Ellesmeres versus the Brutals, for example.
I think there's a lot of stuff that goes into min-maxing and getting the most out of your spec, but I think a lot of times it's confidence. I see a lot of healers that are really good lack confidence, and it shows in their gameplay. A lot of healing, especially in higher keys, but just in general, is about making sure that you have full trust in the decisions that you're making. So basically, like, when you start second guessing yourself as a healer, and when you start second guessing what button you're going to press at any given moment, that is what ends up screwing you over. You end up, taking that extra second and not casting the spell that you should have cast because you second guess your decision. So I think that when I watch healers play with confidence, it's really incredible to see how strong they can be. And then when I watch them, get knocked down and then lose some of that confidence, there's a huge effect in their gameplay, an absolutely huge effect in their gameplay. Obviously there's more to it, when it comes to, optimizing your UI, pouring in tons of hours into the game, and making sure that you have, studied, routing, and you've studied what mobs do, what casts are going off. And then there's, reactive gameplay, proactive gameplay, and there's a million things that go into optimizing your character. But I think that oftentimes people focus on the wrong things. I see people hyperfixate on secondary stat optimizations or things that just have very little relevance to your overall throughput, versus actually spending time on the things that are going to make a big difference. Like making sure that you know exactly what button priority you should have at any given moment, exactly what like where you should allocate your cooldowns. Things like that are going to make a significantly larger impact in your gameplay than optimizing your secondary stats or staring at raid bots for the 5 millionth time. And I think that's where a lot of people lose some of their time investment into the game, and in terms of like how quickly they're able to level up their gameplay, is maybe just focusing on the wrong things sometimes.
So I want to talk about how I know we've been talking about how healing feels, is what I'm trying to say, but I'm going to talk about why people may not gravitate toward the role as often as DPS, for example. And Jack, we're going to start with you. Why do you think healer representation is commonly an issue? Is it complexity, responsibility, the fact that there's only one slot in every 5-man group? Just where do you think it comes into play?
So a lot of times I feel like difficulty is, just like a wide spectrum. And there's a lot of moments where you kind of jump from like one end of the spectrum to the other with healing. You've had times where healing is so simple that it's just a 4th DPS a lot of times, and who can add the most DPS, what spec can do the most damage is the one that's going to be more desired. And you're just brought around for like DPS, like in Shadowlands in a lot of cases, like Vesper Totem, or even like the heavy passive, like Priest, Fey Guardians, PI type of situation where it's like your damage contributions mattered a lot. And in a lot of those situations in Shadowlands, there were some heal checks. There's like Sanguine Depths, of course, but there were a lot less difficult challenges than I think that we experienced in like the War Within dungeons. And so I think a lot of people have gravitated away from healing in the War Within because the damage is so fast. And a lot of times you're looking to try to save some people in a heartbeat. And, it kind of goes back to what Ellesmere was talking about with the playing with confidence. It's like playing with poise and understanding that like a cast might go off, but you might survive it. And then you need to actually change your plan. If you were trying to do some damage 1 minute, a volley goes off and you might be able to keep people alive. There's one person you could dispel from the debuff. You could land hand somebody else. You could bubble somebody else, or you could bubble yourself. You have like multiple different steps you need to take in a heartbeat or they die. And that just gets incredibly frustrating because even at the pug level, that's something that gets experienced. I think people argue like, oh, it's infinitely scaling content. Of course, you're going to hit a moment where somebody just explodes. But the 10s and the 12s also experience that sort of situation. And since your success as a healer is binary, people live or they die, rightfully or wrongfully, somebody dies, you're going to get the blame. And that's never fun.
Meg, with you being in charge of Way of the Crane, what's the URL again? I just want to make sure people know it.
wayofthecrane.io.
.io, thank you. I didn't want to say .com mistakenly. You've got a really good finger on the pulse. You kind of know what people are thinking and feeling. I'm sure you get a lot of feedback from people who are playing Mistweaver in this case. What do you think Blizzard or the community realistically, or what could Blizzard or the community realistically do to make healing more appealing again?
I mean, Jack was kind of talking about it where people like healing for different reasons. And maybe the reason that I like healing is because I like being in control over whether people live or die, or I like doing the, group defensives for whatever boss. Maybe that's why I like it. But I think it would be hard to make healing appeal to everybody because just last week we were talking about how dumbed down everything is starting to feel. And a lot of people are like, I'm going to try healing now. And I'm like, I might just go play DPS because that's not why I heal. But I do worry about the agency. But I also think I might be the minority. And I think that we, as, like high keyers, high raters, are the minority. I don't think a lot of healers actually want to be that in control of things. So I don't know what they can do to make it more appealing, honestly.
I would argue, though, that one way of fixing these things impacts the other negatively, whereas the other doesn't impact the other negatively. So basically what I'm saying is if you make it so that healers can do more damage, it doesn't negatively impact the healers that do not want to do damage, despite the common myth that people care about healer damage. The reality is that the only time people actually cared about healer damage was when it was entirely broken in an unacceptable state, aka Ashen Hollow in Shadowlands. Nobody's advocating for that level of healer damage, but healer damage should have should have a realistic amount of impact on keys in general and in gameplay in general. If that player wants to, they should have the ability to do that because it does nothing but enhance and allow for more skill expression and give healers room to grow in their play style, and it doesn't negatively impact the people who do not want to DPS. There is this common myth, where people are like, oh, healers feel pressured to play optimally. And because they feel pressured to play optimally, that means that they want to, min-max every single global. And for me, it's like, I think that we severely underestimate or overestimate the average player. The average player is doing +2s to +6s at best. The average player is not reading guides, not watching Twitch streamers. They don't know who any of us are. The average player is just loading up the starter build on their character and doing a couple casual, runs for fun with friends or whatever it might be. But the people who are pushing their characters to higher limits, there should be room for their playstyle to grow outside of just raw healing throughput. There should be the ability to increase your agency and the amount that you contribute to the group without negatively impacting. And so the whole idea is that, okay, you can't give healers the ability to do meaningful damage without negatively impacting the casual healers. But that's just not true. Unless somebody can really present me with an argument, which I have not heard yet. I've argued this for a long time. And I have not heard anybody give me a solid reason for why. The best I've heard is that these players look up guides and they want to play optimally, and playing optimally means contributing damage. But like I said, healer damage has been irrelevant for so many expansions. If you're zoning into a plus 10 vault key, and somebody's complaining about healer damage, that player needs to be put on some sort of ignore list
Evaluated.
forever.
It needs to be blown up.
Like, yeah, like that is
Thought we were
just
going a
absolutely
little
outrageous.
darker there.
No.
Yeah. No, I
I
think there's
will
like
add-
there's like a healer. I think it's like the healer mean girl situation where I feel like some of the people who always like whine about healer damage right now of like, oh, this healer needs to be doing more, are people who've like played healer in the past and they're like, oh, like you're not doing enough damage, you're not doing enough of this or that. And meanwhile, like the DPS players, they don't care. They don't even think about that stuff. They don't even think about what the healer is doing. They're just thinking about what they're doing. You know,
Yeah, most
and I
DPS don't
agree
even
to your
have healing
point.
meters.
Yeah, most of the time they don't. You know, and like to your point, I think I think what I've really like about your point is being able to have the best of both, where you can make the baseline game simple enough for people to pick up and understand, but also give enough runway for high-end players to express their skill. But if your damage contribution is so low, then even if you work and sweat and do excellent damage relative to your maximum, you do 99% of your maximum damage in a run, you're making the run go 5 seconds faster or something. And like, yeah, it's something, but it's not going to make up for a death by any means.
Yeah.
And so having the sweet spot there, I think, is important for like the long road of players.
I agree.
I will
Yeah.
say that coming from like a Mistweaver specific point of view, to make it more appealing would just be to have tools that scale well. Like we
Yeah.
have like I complain about this all the time. This is like the horse I've been riding lately. Life Cocoon sucks, man. I put 3
Yeah.
talents into it and it's still
Aw.
terrible. Like
Add a
it's,
DR.
It's so bad. It needs to have a DR. It needs to have the baseline cooldown that Chrysalis gives it. 3 talent points to make it what it is, and it's still the worst in the game. So
Yeah.
for Mistweaver, it's like I don't even need a reason to be brought at this point. I need less reasons to not be brought by having like a real button for my tank or something. So I think having a little bit more of an even playing field when it comes to like our toolkit would make it more appealing. Because I know some people are like, oh, I'd like to try Mistweaver, but I don't want to sit in queue for 3 hours. And I'm like, yeah. You're not wrong.
Yeah.
Right,
And
it
that's
is-
something that seems inevitable.
Go
Is
ahead.
like as it gets easier to re-roll and gear up a new character, there's increasing pressure to go play around whatever is flavor of the month. And then a lot of people who have associated, their identity or just what they generally enjoy playing, then have to go play something that they may enjoy half as much or a quarter as much of their main. But then, yeah, I think it's like the almost like mass psychosis of like, you need to do what all these 0.1 percenters do, rather than you just need to do the dungeon well. You need to, understand what the mobs do. You need to, understand where the damage is coming from, what's unavoidable, what is avoidable. And a lot of people skip that, go to copy those that do look up things, go to copy whatever the best players are doing, try to build a group around that, and then they just smash face into content.
Mm-hmm. All right.
You know?
It's question time for the 3 of you guys. We're like 10-15 minutes off from when the show is supposed to end, but we still have a bunch of questions. Do you guys want to extend the show, or do you want me to cut some questions?
I'm chilling.
I
Cut
can
everybody's
extend
questions
to
but
3.
mine.
All right. We're gonna go a few minutes over if you guys are okay with that, because I really am enjoying this conversation. I want to keep asking things and learning and whatnot. So, but I won't hold you for another hour or anything. It'll be 15 to 30 minutes max. But if anyone's got to go, please speak up.
If I have anything to say about it, it'll be another hour.
Trust me, it's better than you guys giving like 1 or 2 word answers and then us
Right.
having an hour of time to kill. So I appreciate it. I really do. We're going to jump into accessibility and UI because I know this is a huge topic for a lot of people. I have definitely made my feelings known about UI. I'm a big add-on and UI guy. I have been for decades now. But we're not here to talk. You're not here to listen to me. We're here to listen to you guys. Meg, we're going to start with you. Blizzard, as you guys know, they have been on this crusade to declutter the screen, to strengthen the base UI, which I think is great. You know, it's a great mentality, a great way to think about it. But from a healer's perspective, how do you think it's going, and how do you think it's going to land, if you had to guess?
So since the beginning of all the add-on Armageddon or the add-on Purge or whatever people are calling it, I agree with the concept that you should be able to just log in, play the game, understand most of what you need from a native standpoint. I don't disagree with that. I think that the time frame they've given themselves is far too short, and they're not going to have time to fix everything, and they don't have the manpower that the community does, because there's millions of us and there's like 15 of them, like, for the UI department. So
If that.
I if that, I don't disagree with what they're doing or why they're doing it. I just don't think that it's going to end up fitting the time frame at a quality that WoW players would expect. So we talked about it a little earlier. Sorry, we're
Yeah.
barking.
It's all
We
good.
talked about it a little earlier with the audio cues and how I hate them, and how Ellesmere loves
Yeah,
them, or how
Jack.
they use their frames for the kicks, or I use Plater, and that's all good and fine. But I don't necessarily see a reason why we can't just have information displayed to us in a way that we would like. As long as we're not gaining new information through weak auras or add-ons, we should be able to
Yeah.
change how the information looks.
I know we have a lot of customizations coming, down the pipeline from add-on authors and creators, and we haven't seen everything yet. And also Blizzard is, as far as we know, they haven't locked everything in yet either. So we know that there are more changes. But Jack, how do you think things are shaping up right now? As someone who raids, as someone who does Mythic Plus, as somebody who is very much a part of the PvE community.
I think Blizzard is eventually going to chicken out. And I think what we're seeing right now is like the process of this. Because initially they said combat add-ons are just gone, like screw this, like none of that garbage, get out of here. And now they've adjusted to say, okay, we can have combat add-ons, but they can't do more than the baseline UI does. And what we've been seeing recently, especially on Twitter lately, is a lot of people are posting, hey, here's like the 50 add-ons I'm using to make, my add-ons and UI look the same as it does on live. And like, we're in the very beginning of this pretty cool optimization phase where we're rebuilding how add-ons are going to be structured and how they're going to look, but also what they're going to allow. And especially as healers are speaking up, because we have so many different parts of the UI that we interact with more so than others, like raid frames, for example. That's where they're starting to give more ground on what they're letting the add-on developers actually have access to. And they recently did a post, like a huge lengthy post, about what they were changing with add-ons. One of the things they're like, hey, runes, holy power, we're going to let you guys specifically customize this so you can make it look like a bunch of Tyrannosaurus Rexes on a surfboard if you wanted to for holy power, or you can make it look like, shiny orbs of sun. You can have this customization you want. And I think they're starting to continuously give ground. And so, funny enough, we're not really going to hit a situation where we're not using any add-ons or we're not dependent on add-ons. We probably will be, but we're going to hit a point instead where we're going to like still use add-ons, but there's going to just be a lot more limitations in place. So I think it'll end up being a point that's fine. I'm sure you're going to hear a lot of complaints from like add-on developers as they're used to, taking a route through the mountains to go make their add-ons work, but now they have to take a route underneath the bottom of the sea and find a way to, make it to dry land in order to make the add-ons work going forward. So I think it'll eventually work, because if there was a catastrophic add-on failure where everybody's UIs were like 80% worse or something, then the game would explode, right? It's like the train that's like bearing down on us and we're just, jumping around on the train tracks, having a fun time. Like, we know that it's coming. We can get out of the way in time. And I think Blizzard's not perfect solution, but the one that's available to them is going to be to, keep on giving ground to the add-on developers so that they can manipulate the things that they want to, and people's UIs will be similar to what they used to be.
Jack, do you think that these changes actually reduce noise, or do you think it's going to make it harder to spot what matters? I mean, we've seen the raid frame changes and these fancy new icons and whatnot.
I think it'd be honestly kind of the same. People can have their UIs as messy or as clean as they really want them to be. And I think you're going to have limitations, and there's going to be some stupid ones, I think, with like being able to see the cast or who's being cast on from the nameplate, but not being able to see it on the raid frame, I think is going to be silly. I don't think it's too bad of a thing, even though it's convenient for high level players. I also don't really think it's the end of the world to not track every single person's cooldowns and have to like kind of juggle around those things. I understand it. It kind of sucks not having that information, but coming from like playing Fellowship, I'm like, oh, I don't really mind this anymore because everybody's sort of on this even playing field with that game. So there's like positive and negatives about it, but I think what you're seeing right now is like we're gonna get to a good spot with add-ons so that it may not be as insane as they used to be, but it'll be like acceptable for people to play.
Ellesmere, where do you think the line is between clarity and overload with this type of stuff?
I think I might piss a lot of people off when I say this.
Do it.
But I think that the I think that this whole add-on purge removal thing was a massive overreaction to a problem for a very small percentage of WoW players.
Agreed.
I think that I don't really have a dog in this fight, and I know that people like to say that I do, because a lot of people are like, "Oh, well, I mean, you use weak auras like crazy," and yeah, I do, because that's what's available to me, and if they weren't available to me, I wouldn't use them. In fact, yesterday I did a stream where I did some plus 20 keys with no UI whatsoever, with like no, weak auras or anything like that, and honestly, it was pretty much the same. I just had less information. And it didn't really impact how I played the game that significantly. I didn't enjoy it as much. But the whole concept of like weak auras play the game for you or whatever it might be is overblown and honestly affects an extremely minute percentage of the population. Does it have impact on like these top players? Absolutely it does. Does it give people unfair advantages in terms of race the world first and stuff like that? Sure. But again, we're talking about such a tiny percentage of players who are getting affected by this. For example, having to create these mythic raid fights around weak auras and stuff. Yes, I recognize that has to suck for the developers. They are in an arms race against these, but the reality is that arms race affects so few people that actually play this game, and the repercussions of this ripples across everyone, including the 95% of the player base that never even steps foot in Mythic Raid or high M+ at all. That number is probably low, by the way. It's probably closer to 98. It's a massive percentage of the population of WoW that just does not do any of this content, which is the main core. Like, if you're asking, okay, why is Blizzard really doing these changes? You'd be silly to not be like, okay, the main reason is because raid design and these encounters have gotten so trivialized by these weak auras. And that's fair. I get that. That is true, right? And I also hate having to install the 5,000th weak aura and update them for every boss fight and the liquid packs and all this shit. It's awful. Don't get me wrong. I don't enjoy it one bit. And do I wish that there weren't weak auras for all that shit? Absolutely. But do I want to negatively impact the millions of players who play this game just because of that one thing that only affects, an extraordinarily small percentage of the population of WoW? No. And what Blizzard is trying to do with this add-on change is ultimately they don't want it to impact all those other players, right? They don't want it to have any impact whatsoever on the 98% of players who are not, doing this content. But the reality is that by making such sweeping changes to what add-ons can access, it's affecting things that they didn't even think about. It's affecting tons of add-ons in ways that they couldn't even dream of. Weak Auras itself did incredible things for a massive portion of this community, including players who don't even step foot in any type of competitive content ever. And they are all about to lose that because of this change. And I know that Blizzard doesn't want that, but the reality is that they are making life difficult enough for these add-on developers that these add-on developers have decided it's not worth their time to have to do these sweeping changes across the core center of how their coding works. And so while I appreciate and understand what Blizzard's core concept and direction was with these add-on changes, I think that it has a very minimal impact on what it was supposed to impact, aka competitive gaming. Players at the top end will figure out ways to do whatever it is to display information however they want. They're always going to have ways around it, and they're always just going to have ways to play around it because they're the best players in the world for a reason. And it's going to have very little impact on those players, despite people thinking that it will have a huge impact on them. And it'll have a huge impact on the people that it's not supposed to impact at all. And that's my big problem.
That's exactly what THC said a couple of weeks ago. He says, listen, those of us in Liquid and guilds along those lines, we're going to be fine. Like, yeah, it sucks, but we're not going to be affected to the same degree as the people who are, in the top 100, top 1,000, or the whatevereth. And I completely agree with that. They're going to be fine because that's just the type of guild they are, the type of gamers they are. Jack, Meg, what do you guys think?
I think there's kind of go ahead, Meg.
I was wondering if you would both talk at the same time.
I have that problem. Like outside of normal stuff that we track that I have to assume will be coming to beta soon with the raid frames, I'm not super worried because I know that we can always just look at logs and troubleshoot that way, or just like we'll figure it out. Like we'll make it work, but not everyone is going to do that. Some people will just stop playing.
Yeah, I mean, this is like an accessibility /UI, topic, and I mean that's what a lot of people continue bringing up: the people that are partially blind, the people that are deaf, the people that have these gaps filled by weak auras or add-ons. I mean, they're going to be hit hard, and I know Blizzard is working on that. I'm not saying that they're not, but that's the one thing that springs to a lot of people's minds. Jack, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think the extra element that we haven't talked about has been like the new player experience. And I think it's pretty relevant for this whole conversation that there's a lot of moments where new players are thrown into the game and they're instantly saying, hey, you have to like download these other tools to change how your interface looks because the interface itself is so bad that you are going to have a disadvantage. And they've even said verbatim that like using add-ons gives you an advantage over the baseline UI. And I think that having this sort of reckoning, while it is going to cause a lot of pain and it's going to cause some people to stop developing add-ons or stop developing, weak auras or something along those lines. It also has a relevance on being able to set limitations on something that was kind of unlimited with add-ons, weak auras, and things like that. And, to your point earlier, Ellesmere, with people being like the average player, not really looking up guides, not really looking up information. They're probably not the ones who are having, tons of knowledge about how to use add-ons and optimize their UI. I've seen tons of people who are like, I've never used add-ons, or I don't use add-ons and I still do my 10s just fine. It's like, okay, that's fine. But now they're making it so the base UI is going to be better than it was in the War Within. And they're having limitations on like what add-ons can do. And so even if we're going to have, I mean, this sounds kind of cold-hearted, but even if we're having add-ons shutting down, we're going to have like new ones come around to fill in that niche, because that's what having a popular game with third-party development possible is going to happen, is that it allows people, it's churn, but it's going to allow new things to arise from it. And I think that we're probably headed towards like the best solution, the best realistic solution. The best solution would have been them, obviously making their UI excellent and incredible and following through with what they initially said that they were going to do. But I think we all knew that wasn't going to happen. I think this is like the next best solution where you give enough leeway for the community to make some tools under restrictions that'll be allowed to not really exceed the baseline UI so that new players can come in, mess around with the base UI, not feel like they're massively disadvantaged or not be massively disadvantaged. And there's some limitations set on like the high end players.
But here's where, okay, so I hear you, but here's where you lost me, because why can't we just improve the base UI and make all of these great improvements for the base UI without having to restrict add-ons? Because you can create a much better new player experience so that less and less and less and less players feel the need to have these things, right? Without actually restricting these things, so that you can still, and yeah, sure, that means there will be a very small percentage of the population that steps into Mythic Raid and their guild is like, hey, you need to get these weak auras. Yes, that will happen, or would happen in this theoretical world. But the average player, if you improve the base UI without restricting it, would there would be significantly less of a need for those players to get these, extra tools to help. So I don't really see. Yeah, there absolutely would. Because
do you think that if I was a Holy Pally newbie and I started watching Ellesmere and I want to be just like you when I grow up, that I would be like, I'm good enough having the base UI. I'm good enough not having Ellesmere's UI. I'm good enough not having these tools set up.
No, I do not think so. I think that you are right, but I also think that you are taking a super small subsect of players and treating it like the average player, because the average player, like I said, does not know who I am. The average HPAL doesn't know who I am. They don't know my name. They don't watch my streams. Like, the average player is just logging on and throwing up their starter build. They might look up a WoW head guide, but you're talking about a very small subset of players who are actively looking to improve their gameplay as much as possible. And I don't think there's anything wrong with introducing weak auras or add-ons or other things to extend their gameplay past, the default.
So I think we're kind of talking about two different things. And this is kind of like the passive and like active conversation we had before. So Legion Remix, I think, is a good example that people are really willing to go out of their way to grind for some things that are not what I would call like skill dependent. You could just sit there and farm frogs and stuff like that, whatever you do in Remix to make your character ultra mega powerful, right? Same thing goes with all the people who will incessantly ask all of us, hey, what are the best stats? What are the exact percentages I should have for the stats? This is what I kind of refer to as like passive optimization, like out of the gameplay itself. What can I do to improve my performance? But when it comes to active optimization of like what buttons do I press in what order, people are, average player, I think we've all experienced, they really don't like that kind of studying. They don't really like that kind of homework. When it comes to, hey, if I can get an advantage because I see these other people using add-ons, these other people using tools, I need to go get those. I need to go out of my way. I need to look their character up and find out how I can optimize my stats. I think all those things kind of go into the same boat when it comes to the add-on situation. And there are some pieces that are legitimately super powerful, being able to track the uptime of players' defensives when they have them active, the cooldowns of them with Omni CD, even tracking, crowd control and damage cooldowns has an impact on how quickly a pack dies. And so, yeah, you could make the UI a little bit better, but I think all of our experiences with Blizzard's UI tools is that they're always going to be a little bit worse in certain ways. And so they had to make some kind of limitations for those sort of things going forward.
But I also think, okay, so I'm kind of the opinion as like, I don't know. I guess I'm kind of like the opinion of like, who cares if you have, Omni CD that allows for tracking that gives a bit of an advantage to people who opt to use it. Like, I understand that it would be nice to not have to get that add-on, but the players who are already looking to improve their gameplay enough that they're interested in getting Omni CD or tracking all that stuff and playing around that information are the players who probably, first of all, we're talking about, again, a super small percentage of players. The average, like, if you look at percentage of players who have Omni CD installed versus percentage of players who do M+, it's going to be staggeringly small. We're talking like 5%. I don't have exact numbers, obviously, but I guarantee you that somebody who does have the exact numbers would say the same thing. It is a very small percentage of players who do M+ who actually track cooldowns via OmniCD. Now, obviously, if you're playing super optimally, yes, you do want to have OmniCD. You do want to track that stuff. But I think it's important that we keep in mind, how are we negatively impacting all the other players who play this game in order to basically surface level mitigate? Because are you really negatively impact, or are you really like taking away a lot of the tools that these players have, or are they just going to find new, like, people who are looking to improve their gameplay enough that they're downloading OmniCD and tracking, they're going to find new ways of doing that same kind of stuff. They're going to figure out new ways of tracking, new ways of figuring out how to access this information, or they're just going to figure out new ways of playing around not having that information. The reality is it really won't change much.
No, but that's exactly the thing. If players that are ultra sweaty are already going to find other ways to adapt, then it's going to be okay to draw limitations, because the people who are the sweatiest are always going to find some kind of way around it. And to your point about how many people would go out of their way to download add-ons, there's 32 million downloads out of OmniCD. There's 235 million downloads out of Weak Auras. These things are absolutely like prevalent across the board for players to utilize. And we're not even worrying about like the sweatiest who will find a way to optimize around it. But there are always going to be those who are trying to improve their performance. And if they know a tool is going to do it, they're going to feel the pressure to go out of their way to pursue that tool. And then for every new player coming into the game, they're then having this sort of negative action towards them if they're not going out of their way to optimize. Oh, you don't have details? Oh, you don't have weak auras? You're a noob. What are you doing? You're hurting your performance by not having these tools. Go out of your way to grab these tools to better your own performance. And that's what Blizzard has to draw some kind of line for.
Okay, but two things. One is, you can, like I said, if Blizzard is creating a better base UI and creating all of these things, then the need for these replacements for that UI will drop significantly, because right now there is no replacement, right? You need details because there literally isn't one in WoW. But if there was a baseline one, the need for details would go down significantly. Same thing with all these other, replacements that they're doing. So the need for new players to get these things will drop significantly. And then also, to your point, I hear what you're saying about like OmniCD and the amount of people that have it and stuff like that. And I do agree that a lot of people use it. But again, if we were just talking about removing this, strictly just removing this, I would be fine with it, if it was just like, okay, we're going to take away OmniCD, we're going to take away Liquid Weak Aura packs for Raid and all the stuff similar to that. We're going to take away, if we were able to just like pick and choose what we were destroying, I would have no problem with it. But the problem I have is that in order to destroy these things, these things that a small percentage of the player base uses, we have to destroy a huge amount of other things that the player base also uses. We're talking extremely, extremely far-reaching stuff that has nothing to do with combat, that is still going to be affected by this. Now, if that wasn't the case, I wouldn't be arguing here. I wouldn't care, right? I would be 100% on board. But the reality is, it's kind of you can't have one without the other type of situation. If you're going to destroy this information for, parsing combat and all this stuff, we have already seen that it has way larger reaching implications than just removing the problem children. It's creating these massive ripple effects that are affecting tons of other things in the game, and a way wider percentage of the player base than it ever meant to impact. And that is my problem.
And isn't that where they're also addressing it in the big blog post, though? Is that they realize that there is the collateral damage, and they sort of described this like development for the add-ons as the different paths these developers are taking to develop the add-ons. Some of them are causing the collateral damage, like you're talking about, with like, okay, we're removing OmniCD, but that's also going to cut down for something that Weak Auras would do that's benign, that's out of combat. Now, what we're seeing is the churn for, okay, the path through the mountains is not allowed. The path through the woods is not allowed, but you can walk across the plains. And now people who are using who had previously used, I don't know, Plater, are now using, what is it called, Platinator, and now that's going to be like the new thing to have new versions of nameplates. What we're experiencing right now is like the chaos and the churn and the like bedlam that's coming from them, from add-on developers having to discover new ways to deal with the collateral damage. Yeah, the collateral damage is shitty, but I think I trust a lot of the add-on developers to have a good solution figured out 2-3 months down the line, where you could still get really well optimized UIs that hardcore players are used to, and perhaps new players might want to go pursue those things. But if they hit the intended goal, which is a big if they hit the intended goal, these add-ons aren't going further than the base UI, then we're going to hit a point where it's going to be a great dub. I would love it if we hit a world where our UI was similar to Fellowship and it was already from the beginning, and you're not finding yourself wanting for more because you have something that's super solid from the beginning. I don't think we're necessarily going to hit that point, but it'll be something that they'll probably be doing throughout Midnight to eventually get the base UI to that point. And then, we enter into the Last Titan for something along those lines, where the base UI is good, add-ons still have some tools at their disposal, but they've had restrictions to them.
But my
Why is
problem
that?
is that we're not actually talking about. So you say add-on developers you trust, and I agree with that.
Yeah.
But the problem is that we don't just have to trust add-on developers now. We have to trust add-on developers, and we have to trust Blizzard to figure out all of these little things that and make sure that Blizzard lifts the right restrictions in the right areas. And so far, we haven't seen enough of that. We haven't seen enough of enough precision. We've seen Blizzard kind of swinging their mallet, and I recognize that Blizzard's goal is correct, right? But we have to now have faith that not only is Blizzard going to execute that goal to precision, which, let's be honest, doesn't have the best track record of doing that.
I agree.
And not only do we have to do that, but we also have to then trust, or we also have to then hope that add-on developers are going to, spend the time that's necessary to figure out all these new ways around these problems that didn't exist before. So we're creating a lot more work for these add-on developers, and it's super unclear exactly how things are going to play out. This whole thing just screams to me of, we should have had at least another expansion of Blizzard improving their base UI before we started creating all these restrictions. It all feels super rushed, and like, if we didn't have exceptional replacements for all of these core parts of the game, and if we didn't, have years of discussing with add-on developers all these tiny little things, because this game is massive. WeakAura is massive. The amount of shit that is customizable in this game is absolutely fucking huge. And it's not going to be solved in a few months, especially when they're also trying to create an entire expansion. If it were just the UI that they were doing, maybe a year. But the reality is we're trying to do way too much, way too quickly. And they didn't even start talking to add-on developers, at least publicly, until alpha, or slightly before that, when they started introducing more baseline stuff. It hasn't even been a year, and they're still discovering stuff every day. There are hundreds of posts from add-on developers about like all these tiny little things that make a massive difference. And the reality is that, look at the current game. Look at the amount of massive bugs in the current game. We're in a current M+ season where one of the dungeons, you can't even make it through without experiencing game-breaking bugs, in a Mythic Plus environment.
What are you talking about? I don't know what you mean.
and yet we expect them to be able to comb through all of this feedback with such a fine toothbrush that they're able to get everything perfect. And even if they don't, right, I don't even expect them to get everything perfect by the expansion after Midnight. But that's why I'm saying there should have been a longer time between when they introduced this concept and when they tried to roll it out than just trying to rush it all into this expansion, because the first few seasons are going to be really rough with add-on developers scrambling, Blizzard scrambling to try to accommodate. It doesn't matter how good the goal is of Blizzard and how perfectly all their blog posts and dev posts are, which, yeah, I agree. Their goals are really spot on, and I don't actually have a problem with a lot of what they're trying to accomplish. I have a problem with the way that they are accomplishing it.
Yeah, the goal is
And,
good.
and the
but
way that
the
they're trying to rush
execution-
through it.
Yeah, and I
The
think
thing that
that's
I-
something.
Let,
Yeah, go ahead,
let
Meg.
Meg
Sorry.
talk. Hold on,
No,
hold on.
like all four of us started talking at once. The thing that I always just come back to is that even though the add-on stance has changed pretty recently, like coming into Midnight, I don't understand what was stopping them from iterating on the UI for the last 20 years. Like
Mhm.
if I logged into like
Exactly.
a brand new WoW client, it would look exactly the same as when I was 8 years old, which is ridiculous. Like that's insane. So I know that it was like oh, we didn't because we didn't need to because we had add-ons, but like I don't like that argument. Like you should
Yeah.
still be updating your game to make it look
Yeah.
modern.
Well, and
Like,
that
it was
argument
made,
goes
you know.
against everything that Blizzard is supposedly for, which is that they want the new
Yeah.
they want the new
Yeah.
player experience to be without add-ons. They want it to be, and so where was that stance for the past 2 decades? Why is it now all of a sudden that we're scrambling for all these massive changes, and why are we trying to do it so quickly? Why aren't we
Capitalism.
building
Yeah.
out this base UI much stronger, while allowing these add-ons to exist? And then once you have a really good base UI with all these working elements, then you can start stripping stuff back.
I think it's
This was-
because of how they want to optimize their bottom line, and they've had to do it for a very long time of showing that they can be like the cash cow for Activision Blizzard over the years. And this is the result. This is the bill becoming due. They said in their big post that they could either go for an entire other expansion of trying to deal with this war on computational weak auras and add-ons and tools and keep fighting this arms race, or they could start ripping the Band-Aid off and move quick and break things. And I agree. It would have been better if they had taken some more time and been more conscientious, slowly worked on it in the same way that they were slowly working on housing for a very long period of time. Ideally, they should have done these kind of things. But I think the world's full of times where things should have worked differently or should have been done better. But all we have is like what's in front of us right now. And I think the most relevant things are how they have moved away from their early extreme stance of no combat add-ons and are now, in my view, chickening out of that and now giving a lot more ground to the small niche things that you're talking about with allowing add-ons to do certain things. And that's why, yeah, it is a lot more work for the add-on developers, but I think that because this community is so strong from a developer's perspective, we are going to get the solutions that we need. They might even come from brand new sources of people we've never heard of before, making insanely good add-ons that'll help fill in some of the niches that some of the like Death of Weak Auras or LVY, if those even happen, might have caused. And so, yeah, I think they should have done those kind of things better, but I'm glad that this process is starting because it's been a weight on everybody. And it's a weight that everybody feels every time you have to upload or update, the Liquid Weak Aura reminders or the Northern Sky Weak Aura reminders or any of those other kind of tools to figure out a boss fight. Every time you wipe on a fight because somebody had the wrong installation of that setup, that's going to be the extra price that people are continuously paying. And
But I would rather pay that price than
That's-
negatively
yeah.
impact 98% of WoW's population that doesn't have to work. How many,
we
like,
don't
what
know if it's
percentage
going
of
to
WoW's
impact everybody, though. We don't know if it's going to impact everybody because if the add-on developers are still making solutions to solve, 80, 90% of those problems that we're facing, we might have a reduced and scaled back UI. It might suck not having, Omni CD or some of the tracking that Cell had access to and stuff. But if it's going to be good enough to get us over the hump, then I think it'll be satisfying enough for people to deal with and overcome.
I mean,
But
I
just to
guess
say,
then
like-
it's just kind of a wait and see. I guess we'll see. Like,
It is, well, it is.
I could
But
see
think what's
either.
encouraging. Yeah, what's encouraging to me though is you see Zerwo and Quasi on Twitter talking about the new changes they're making for their UIs and their interfaces and how they're optimizing around it. The people who are going to be the least affected are the 0.1% players who are also going to be the forerunners for developing what our UIs are going to look like going forward. They're the ones who are going to put in the effort to sort of solve these problems.
We are grossly overtime today, which I got
Oh,
permission for
sorry.
the record. No, it's dude. I say this sincerely. I love conversations like this. That was awesome hearing you guys talk about that kind of stuff. But I don't want to hold you hostage for way longer than I promised. I'm a stickler for letting people get back to their lives. I do want to talk about a couple of quick things in the future of healing. If you guys have a few more minutes, is that okay?
Yeah,
Sure.
that's fine.
Meg, I want to start with you, and I'm actually going to send you a question that I didn't color code it for you in the notes. So buckle up.
Oh,
Here we
no.
go. How do you want healing to evolve in the rest of the Saga era? Like, what do you want to see come into play for Midnight and beyond? Or are you happy with the way that things are at the moment?
The things that I want are not going to happen. I would mostly
That's a
from
good answer.
a Mythic Plus perspective, I'd like to see healers become more of a support role rather than a healer role because I like having a kick, I like having
Wait,
stops.
where's
you know.
Ellesmere? Let me
I
zoom in
like
on
to-
Ellesmere. Hold on. What was that?
I play Mistweaver because we're in melee and because I like having all those different aspects of our kit in addition to being a healer. And like when they introduced AUG as support, I was like, that's my job. Like I should be having more impact on group survivability than the
Sure.
stupid support spec that I don't even. It's a
True.
lizard man. Like I was not happy about the introduction of that because I wanted healers to kind of step into
Yeah.
that role more rather than just I'm healing. So
Yeah.
that's not going to happen because we're headed in the opposite direction. But
Sorry, Meg. If only
what can you
listen, get a job at Blizzard, work your way up, make the change you want to see in the world, right?
do?
10
I'm
years
working on
later.
it.
Yeah, 15 years
10
down
years-
the road, right?
10 years later, they'll let her out of Q&A to be an assistant to change one
Yep.
thing. Let's go.
Jack, what do you think? What do you think healer balance is gonna? I know it's way too early, but I love to
Oh, no.
speculate and talk about it. But what do you think healer balance is gonna wind up looking like with talent changes that are in effect, with how things are lining up, and so on and so forth? Do you have any idea, any speculation on that whatsoever?
So you want me to blind guess who's going to
Yep.
be like really good?
Yep, based on all the changes. Yep.
All right. I think it's going to be Arrested
Holy
Druid Holy
Disc,
Pally
all right.
season. No, Arrested Druid Holy Pally.
What makes you
Alright,
say
that's
that?
my hyper early suggestion. Our Druid, they basically did like what I call a lot of folding, where they put two abilities into each other. They sort of folded them on top of each other so that,
Mhm.
two things do one. So efflorescence is dropped by like your life bloom, for example. But they didn't really do a lot to change like the core strengths of Druid compared to where it is in the War Within Season 3. And so I think that it has like a lot of really cool passive tools that are flat increases to what they're already good at, and they're going to be really strong. I actually really like how Holy Pally is shaping up a little bit with the increase in the amount of holy power you have, and with how they're sort of just making more clear like what do you want to do with your flash. I think there's still some of the identity crisis. Like it still feels weird not having Crusader Strike or like Shield of the Righteous as your only ability, but I'm gonna just say it way too early. I think they're just gonna like tune Pally up like really high at the start of the expansion.
I see that smile, Ellesmere. I see that smile.
Yeah,
I wouldn't mind that.
yeah. There you go. That's what I'm gonna say, so that Ellie's a good sport after our debate or something.
Dude.
There it is.
Oh,
Jack or anyone. Do you
I
guys
live
know
for
is-
debates.
Dude,
Yeah, we should do
I'm-
another one. We should do another one.
I'm
sometime.
love
always
it.
down.
Does anyone know? This is just an open question, obviously. Does anyone know is cat weaving still a thing in Midnight, or are they scaling it back to only be cast tiers, or like how does Resto
Yeah, it's
Druid
cat.
DPS?
It's cat stuff.
Cat stuff still? Okay.
A lot of times, I always mix up the names, but you have like a combo point builder that applies a dot. I think it's Rake.
Yeah.
and
or
then-
Rake, yeah. And Rip is
And
the
then I
one
think
you
it's Rip.
spend it on,
Rip
right?
is the spender.
Right.
Yeah. So you rake a bunch of enemies, and then you put your Rip on the big dogs
Okay.
that are going to live for a while. There are some talents where you get healing out of like your shred and your swipe, but I think they're still kind of crappy because our healer damage is so low, like Ellesmere has been saying, that it's not impactful enough to actually push up health bars on its own to keep people alive. So
Mhm.
I think you pretty much are just like multi-dotting,
Meg,
going cat form a little bit.
last direct question to you before we get to the group questions. Do you think that future encounters should push more coordinated healer play, like raid settings specifically, obviously? Or do you think that raid should kind of reward more solo clutch moments? Or is that specifically reserved for Mythic Plus?
I think there could be a balance of either. I mean, I don't think there's a reason necessarily why you couldn't have both in both forms of content. Like in Amir Drasil was probably the most recent example where you ran Mistweaver to heal up the trees on Farok. That was a very
Mhm.
much like let Mistweaver shine, like let Mistweaver do its thing. And that was fun. But it kind of like lessened as you progressed or as you got into farm and stuff. So it was nice to have that kind of like standout moment for a
Sure.
healer that doesn't tend to get that. And I know that other healers have situations like that as well. But I think that a good balance of both is nice because I like having impact, but I also don't like being in charge of everything all of the time
Mhm.
permanently.
I want to ask a personal question of each of you guys related to healing here. Jack, I want to start with you. What keeps you healing even when the game makes it whatever, hard, unfun, whatever?
The first of the month, man. That rent has the rent has to get paid one way or another. All right, rents due. No, I think it's just the ability to have an impact on your friends, and it's very satisfying. It's very gratifying when you are able to make up for mistakes, when you are able to like save a life really quickly. I think that there's in your daily gameplay or something like that. It doesn't happen in every single run, but there's those moments where somebody makes like an awful mistake and you're able to save them from themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's the reason I heal in WoW, Fellowship, Marvel Rivals. Like, I just like healing in these games because you can make a really tangible impact on saving somebody from themselves or from, an opponent. And it's really super satisfying when you kind of feel like you're flying and every single global is effective and valuable, like the end of Dimensius, when your holy priest has apotheosis up and every ability is instant cast and you're running in and out of different circles and lines and dodging stuff, and every single global you're like staring at your frames while trying to peripheral vision as to where you're going and where you're standing. And those things are just exciting.
Ellesmere, what about you, man? What keeps you healing these days?
Mm,
Say your car. Say
My
your car.
my obsession with triage healing and the satisfaction I get from triage healing. Triage healing always been my favorite thing. That's one of the reasons I love HPAL. Targeted healing and making those split-second decisions of like who is in most need of this button at this exact global and making that second decision every single global. It does something to my brain. It just makes me happy. So I love that. I live for that. And so I think that's probably what it would be.
What about you, Meg? What keeps you healing?
The spec, honestly, like Mistweaver is so much more fun than anything else that I've played.
It is fun. I
It's so
agree.
interactive and it's versatile and like there's all these different things about it that I love that I think that if it were to significantly change in a way that I didn't like, I'd probably not be healing anymore. I'd probably
Just
do
quit.
something else.
Just call it quits.
I'll go DPS,
That's
I'd tank
fair.
or something. NA needs more tanks, so maybe.
I want you guys, if you could, Jack, we're going to start with you. If you could send one message to the Wild dev team right now about healers, what would it be? One message.
That's tough.
Is it? There's so many issues right now. You can't pick one.
Yeah. I know. I mean, I'm just trying to think about what's the most important one.
Twitch chat says buff disc.
Yeah, I'm working on a video for like what's going wrong with disc. So yeah, I'll just say disc. Their written intentions don't align with their actions for like what they're changing around the spec, and they're making a lot of changes which seem based around like PvP and not around PvE. And I think that is a stinker. I think they need to get somebody who is used to or more comfortable playing like disc and raids, especially, to start working on optimizing raid ramping, because the current like ramping form of Disc Priest was made in 7.2.5 in Legion, and they've only tweaked it a little bit since then. But single target applying 10 atonements and then applying double radiance is just like extremely outdated, extremely outmoded, and preservation's like proof positive of that. So they need some kind of overall shakeup for how Disc plays in raid, and they should start by reading what they wrote in their own post for beta and taking actions accordingly.
Ellesmere, what about you, man? If you could send one message, what would it be?
I'm gonna take one for the team for all M+ers, and sacrifice my healer specific note to say remove all raid buffs. Just get rid of
Amen,
raid buffs
yes.
entirely.
Yeah.
Please,
Get rid of
yes.
raid
Plus
buffs.
one.
So sick of metas being defined by raid buffs.
Amen,
They have no
man.
business being in M+. So, yeah.
Remove
Thank
Evo
you.
Aura.
Yep, I'm down. Take it away. I don't give a
Right. All right. Let's go.
And I guess the other one would be delete Resto Druids. So
What?
Hey,
Hold on,
true.
man. What? Hold
I'm
on,
kidding,
man.
I'm kidding.
just Resto Druid players.
What the heck, man? That's what I'm planning on maining. Whatever. All right, Meg, off to you. What do
Not
you
anymore.
What?
Not anymore.
One
Back
message.
to the back
One
to
message,
monk.
Meg.
I would probably say just stop being, I don't know if this is what's happening, but stop being afraid of homogenization because I hate that argument. I think it's stupid. I think
Amen.
healers should have a
Mhm.
B-res as a role.
Oh
and
my
I
God,
think that
yes.
everyone should have a decent tank button.
Yeah, you
Just-
guys had way better suggestions than I did. Damn.
That's because you were
Fellowship
first.
Fellowship
Put you on
having
the spot.
trinkets that'll bring you battle res or shroud stuff like that is so good, dude. Like that.
The
that does
trinket
not
system in Fellowship
homogenize-
is goated.
Yeah, it does not homogenize the game. It's just wow, like we can choose what utility we bring to the dungeon in advance, and we don't feel punished for it. Like I can't imagine what it's like having to go into dungeons that require Mass Dispel and then just not having it as a pally, or you have to just sit on your revival forever as a monk just to deal with it.
Yeah.
God,
It's
can-
very
awful.
cringe.
Just watching my tank get one shot in Grim Batol and not being able to do anything about it for
True.
7 packs in a row.
I could sit here and pick your brains for 2 more hours, but again, I hate holding people hostage longer than I promised. So thank you all so much for being here, guys. Again, their Twitch names are under their webcam. Their socials, YouTube, Twitter, etc., are in the YouTube description below when this hits YouTube in the next day or two. Thank you all so much, both viewership and the guests today, for being here. I really, really appreciate it. You guys have been wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
Thanks for having us. Had a great time.
Of course, man.
thanks for
Had a
Yeah,
blast.
Next week, by the way, Melee, our 3 guests. Drum roll, please. We've got Cybear, we've got Word Up. Thank you. And we have Jedith coming next week. Although next week's show will actually be airing on Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern instead of Sunday. I know. Crazy, but I'm moving it forward by 1 day, and I'll be making that announcement as the week unfolds. But I'm gonna let these guys and this gal get out of here because again, it's been more than 2 hours now. So thank you so much, the 3 of you. I really appreciate you guys. And yeah, go check them out, guys. Follow them, subscribe to them, and love on them because they literally help make this community go round in more ways than one. So give yourselves a round of applause. You guys are awesome. Way to go. Proud of you guys. Keep up the good work. We'll see you guys next time. My name is Brutal. That's Automatic Jack. That's Ellesmere _gaming. And that's Megasett. I'll see you guys later.
See ya.
Later. Thanks for having us.
See ya.
You guys can leave if you need to or want to. I'm just gonna hang out for a little bit. But again, now that I'm done with the recording, but thank you guys so much for being here. You guys have been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for
Of
having
course,
us.
man.
I gotta go
Course,
do
of
dog
course.
stuff.
Yeah, get out of here. Go do
Yeah.
dog stuff. I understand. Get out of here.
See ya.
I've been needing to debate with Ellesmere for a while now.
Yeah. We got to do it again.
You guys,
Yeah,
that was
100%.
awesome, man. That was absolutely
That was
awesome.
fun.
All right. I got to head out.
Bye, Ellesmere.
Thanks for
guys.
having me.
Bye,
Bye.
Jack. And then there was me. That was, man, I do not like hold on 1 second. Yeah, anyway. Why is this so quiet? 1 second. There we go. I'm just gonna turn a little bit of WoW lo-fi on in the background. I do not like holding, I know the webcam's messed up, I'm gonna fix it in a second. I don't like holding people longer than I said, but man, once that discussion, that conversation got going, holy moly, man, I just wanted to sit there and listen. I just wanted to hold on to it. Let me see if I can, I'm gonna turn on studio mode. Give me 1 second here. Let me copy this. If I pull this back here and I paste it, let's see what happens. You ready for this? Oh crap, I don't want to paste a reference. Oh, I'm afraid you guys can't see what I'm doing because I have studio mode up. Hold on 1 second. Let me pull this up here. Let's turn the Discord cam off. Let's pull this in. Yeah, wait, let me just turn studio mode off now. There we go. Get this set up. Whoop, whoop. Second. Nice. There we go. That's better. But yeah, that was. I love. I love listening to people talk about things that A, they're passionate about, and B, they're knowledgeable about. And there's no denying, obviously, that the three guests that we had on today are both of those things. They know what they're talking about. They have the experience under their belt. They have the time playing the classes and specializations under their belt. They have a very firm understanding of things. And on top of that, not only do they know what they're talking about, but they're extremely passionate. I mean, we saw it obviously in the discussion, right? They're passionate about it as well. They love to heal. They've been healing for years, and it's just that was fantastic. Truly. Probably know it already, but you can tag people on the title to make it easier to find our participants here. Maybe I don't know that. Are you talking about tagging people like on the Twitch title? Like instead of saying, hey, here's the podcast with Automatic Jack, it'd be, hey, here's a podcast at Automatic Jack. Is that what you mean? That's a very helpful tip, Gallen, who thank you, man. I appreciate that. Ooh, see? Didn't know that. I did not know that. I haven't done a lot of collaboration over the years, which is obviously one of the reasons why I'm choosing to do it. Or it's one of the reasons why I'm doing it at all, is I want to collaborate more and build up, stronger and better community in that regard. So no, I did not know that. I learn something new every day. Very nice. That's really helpful, Callan, who thank you. We had a couple of questions come in, and I think I'm just gonna have to, again, this is only the third episode, and things will evolve and hopefully improve in the weeks and months to come. But one of the things that I once again didn't really do was actually ask questions from the audience, from you guys. And one of the reasons why, or rather the reason why I haven't done that in any of the shows, is just time. The past two episodes, the Warlock Shadow Priest episode and then last week's Hunter episode, those stuck to that 90-minute format. But man, this week I didn't have to, but I wanted to, and thankfully they gave me the permission. Jack, Ellesmere, and Meg, they gave me permission to go 30 minutes over, because that discussion was fun. I just love listening to people talk about stuff that they're knowledgeable and passionate about. But some of the questions that came through, we had a question on YouTube from Grunsaro. How do you feel about the healer damage being less spammable and more impactful? I.e. shamans using Earth Shock and Earthquake instead of spamming Lightning, so that you can weave DPS or hold it for DPS burns. I mean, I don't really have much of an opinion because I'm just so inexperienced at the role. But I find myself, especially when I'm playing either my Resto Druid with cat weaving or my Mistweaver Monk when I'm, punching and kicking things, I like DPSing as even though it's not impactful like we established in the episode just now, even though it's not that impactful at the moment, I like DPSing as a healer while keeping an eye on the group. I think there's absolutely something to be said about, buffing the people in my group, and with PI if I'm playing my priest or whatever. I love empowering other players in my group, and I wish there was more of that. But for me, I also love contributing damage, minuscule as it might be right now. So I would like it to be more impactful, but I would also like it, I don't want to spam DPS abilities, but I would like it to be more impactful for sure. Osiris says, out of everything that details, I was this close to asking this question during the UI section, Osiris, if you're still listening. However, again, just based on time, I chose to cut it. I'm sorry. Osiris TV asks, out of everything the details add-on tracks, which thing or things would you like added to the Blizzard damage meter for healers specifically, and why? At the end of every run, or sometimes in the middle of the run, I like to see interrupts. I like to see CC, like who has done what, how much CC people have done. And of course, with details, you can dig into it. You can see specifically the mage used blast wave, like the mage in the group used blast wave on X target, or on these 4 or 5 targets. And the warrior, who's a Tauren, used War Stomp on these targets. I like being able to see those 2 things. There's also an extension of details called Death Log, Death Note. Hold on, I have it on my WoW up. Give me 1 second. Yeah, details, damage me. No, not that one. Let me search for it here. Death? It's a Death Log extension. Yeah, Advanced Death Logs Details plugin. I like that as well because you can specifically see when someone dies in a Mythic Plus with that extension, you can see what healing potions or health stones were available, what personals were available, both healing personals, defensive personals. You can see what was on cooldown. You can see, of course, the damage intake. So it gives you a really clear idea of, okay, this person died with, let's use a hunter, for example. They died with your survival instinct available. They died with their, what's the hunter heal called? I can never remember what the hunter heal is called. There's a hunter heal ability. They died with, that available. They died with their, not cave dwellers potion, but invigorating healing potion available. So those are probably the 3 things that I really want to see in the damage meter, other than, damage and healing overall. Exhilaration. Thank you, Jeff. Yeah. Exhilaration. Thank you, Scar. And then the other question that was captured was from Hexen on YouTube. Hexen, I don't know if you're still listening. Apologies for not asking this during the middle of the interview, but what if suddenly there's a very boring raid tier because people with add-ons simply had more advantage at clearing bosses? I mean, I don't think that would ever really happen. I think boring raid tiers are boring because of boring raid design. I haven't raided since Castle Nathria, so I don't have much of a horse in this race these days, but I don't necessarily subscribe to the idea of, weak auras and add-ons playing the game for you and making the game brain dead easy and so on and so forth. I definitely still think that as much information that is relayed to players through weak auras and add-ons, it still requires a skillful player to execute and to not stand in things and not fall off of ledges and to DPS the right target and so on and so forth. So I don't think a raid would become boring because of add-ons. I mean, maybe you can use Devil's Advocate, maybe you can use Fractalus as an argument for that. But again, I don't raid right now in Omega, so Omega Manaforge. Is that what it's called? Omega Manaforge? Manaforge Omega? I think it's Omega Manaforge. So I don't really have... I'm not the best person to answer that, sadly, so... Wish they would add, you took avoidable damage soundbite to the... Wait, so you're talking about, like, the moment someone... Manaforge Omega, thank you, Drish. So you're saying the moment someone takes avoidable damage, just innately the game would say, "Hey, you suck!" Something like that, Gallon who? Yeah, Emerald Nightmare, yeah, that's a good one for a raid being too easy. There not been very many boring raid tiers. Emerald Nightmare is a little short. Yep. Jeff and Druish are aligned there. I feel like we can't make the claim that add-ons play the game for us when less than 2% of player base actually clears high content. Add-ons played for us. Yeah, I exactly, Scar. I know what people mean when they say that. They mean that because weak auras presents so much information, because it helps sometimes in really profound, important ways, like Fractalus, that it takes a lot of the thinking out of your approach, which is not, you can't argue that is true. But I absolutely believe that in the relation to how raids are designed and fights are designed versus, the players that are participating in them, when information is not being displayed clearly and visibly, whether it be from a message saying, "Hey, this boss is about to do this mechanic," or, "Oh, there's something happening on the battlefield. There's a glow. There's a portal opening. Something's happening." If something is not visually or textually given to you and it's not easily discernible or understood, that's a problem. And that's where a lot of add-ons help, is they help prioritize and display information. They don't play the game for you, obviously. That's how I look. Yeah, like GTFO does. Yeah. I want the game to publicly humiliate people that take avoidable damage. I like the cut of your jib, Jeff. I like that. That's good. If you take a frontal, automatically post the clip to the WoW TikTok. That's hilarious. If something like that were to ever exist, I would be doom scrolling on that account all day long. If there was add-ons for the easiest 2-button rotation version of this game, just no one. Wait. There were add-ons for the easiest 2-button rotation version. What do you? I'm sorry, Anita. What do you mean? I don't understand what you're saying. Just reword that so I can better understand that, please. With you moving next week's podcast to Saturday, I have a question. How dare you take away my Sunday commute home podcast? I'm sorry, Your Honor. But, Your Honor, you'll be happy to know that even though the podcast will be on Saturday next week, that means that it'll be on YouTube ready for consumption on Sunday. So you'll still have it to listen to. It'll just be on YouTube instead of Twitch. I mean, actually, the stream is on YouTube and Twitch at the same time simultaneously, but nevertheless. It's all fun and games until the tank quick spins the frontal right at you. Yeah, got him, boys. Oh man, that was a fun episode. Again, as someone who's stepping into the role of healing, as somebody who is, doing something that he's never done before, that was a lot of fun talking with those guys and gal, and again picking their brain and hearing from them. Spin that frontal and eco. Oh yeah, from the Sentinel. Is that what you talking about? That mob Scar? Playing hockey pocky with that frontal. Classic had plenty of add-ons and it was a 2-button in most rotation. People saying they play the game for you laughable. Yeah. I see what you're saying, Anita. Agreed. Yep. Yeah, I saw a picture on Twitter the other day of this mage who's on beta, and his button, it's literally a 2-button fire mage rotation based on the build he built for himself. It was like Fire Blast and Fireball or something like that. That's all it was. I'm not saying that's what it will actually be. That's how that person set it up. Is it ever brutal to be a healer main? Yes. That's literally what I'm doing, Arctos. You are correct. Yes, I will be a healer main in Midnight. At least initially. We'll see how it goes. Have you thought about distributing the podcast or things like? Yes, Jeff. I absolutely will do that and plan on doing that when I have a name for the podcast. Because right now, I don't want to build a whole, presence on Spotify and whatnot without having a name for the podcast. If that makes sense. Look, we created the 1-button rotation. Oh, I like that, Jurish. That's good. That's clever. That's good. Oh my goodness. So here's a fun thing. So Alekin and I have been texting today. Alekin was at the airport this morning at like 6 a.m. to catch a flight at 7:45. Okay. So they get on the plane early in the morning, and after they'd been on the plane for a while, 10 minutes before the plane was set to depart, the captain comes out and announces that they can't leave. The air conditioner is broken and they have too much fuel. So the airplane weighed too much. So they had to sit on the plane for over an hour. They finally got the air conditioner fixed. They finally emptied out some of the fuel. And after a set amount of time, the plane starts to push back, and all of a sudden there's a loud bang and the plane just starts shaking. Apparently the tow bar broke off the plane. So then he had to get off the plane. He debarked. I don't know what the right word is there. And that was at 10:30. That was at 11:30 his time. So he was on that plane for about 3.5 hours just dealing with nonsense. Well, anyway, they set up another plane for him and those passengers to fly out at 1:55 Eastern. So right before the show went live. And he texted me at 2 o'clock Eastern. 3 o'clock Eastern, saying that they were delayed another 3 hours. And now he just texted me saying the flight's been canceled. I hate everything. What a waste of time. This poor dude, he's been at the airport for what was that, like 10 hours? Oh my God, man. I would lose my mind. Ooh, boy. Anyway, I just wanted to relay that while we collectively have been sitting here enjoying a conversation with some of the best healers in the game, poor Alekin has been stuck at the airport and stuck on airplanes and so on and so forth. So, yay. There's a lot of incompetence with airlines nowadays. I wish too much fuel's a problem I had. He needed mulch. All right, shut up. He could have. No, he was flying out to where was it? Hold on, it was overseas. He was flying out to Belgium. So I don't think he could have driven there, but you know that's okay. Like Tom Hanks in the terminal. Yeah, that was a good episode, even if it was a little bit longer than the average episode. I think I said this during the episode. I think I said I would rather have an episode that goes on a little too long, where the guests are having a really good conversation, a really good debate, whatever, versus people who just don't communicate and don't really interact and so on and so forth. Could have taken a boat, yeah, indeed. But that was awesome. So yeah, next weekend, Saturday, 2 p.m. is Cybear, Jedith, Word Up. That'll be a melee episode, obviously. Although Jedith is playing a lot of Devourer, so we might talk about that a little bit. Also, guess what I found out today? Now listen, a lot of these individuals that I'm interacting with, I have never interacted with before. I did know THD to some small degree, but I had never really spoken to Kalamazoo or Public. That was episode 1. Last week, I've had numerous conversations with Azertharian, but I had never spoken to Abaddon. I had never spoken to Banchers. And this week, Jack and I have talked a little bit. Never spoken to Ellesmere, never spoken to Megasett. And next weekend, I don't know any of the guests. I've never spoken to Word Up, Cybear, or Jedith. But in doing research for my guests, because I tried to do some research, guess what I found out about Jedith? Yeah, he played EverQuest back in the day. For many, many years. And you know who else played EverQuest for a long time back in the day? This guy. So guess what we're going to be talking about next weekend? EverQuest. A little bit. We might try it. I might try to weave in a little bit of EverQuest into the conversation. So unwatchable. Deal with it, nerds. Yeah, he played EverQuest when he was a little guy. I played EverQuest when I was a teenager. Darn right, Gallon who. Why are you trying to ruin the podcast before it takes off? Hey, speaking of something not taking off, how about Alikin and that plane, huh? Oh, EQ, you guys can talk about your favorite spawn point you spent $100 killing and say that's actually literally what the game was back in the day, Arctos. You're not wrong. Would have turned the podcast into a boomer one. Next week might be a skip. No. It'll just be like 2 questions. It'll be fine. I don't want to hear any moaning or groaning, all right? It's my podcast. I ask the questions around here. You guys are crazy. As much as I would love to sit around here and maybe even play some WoW and have some fun and whatnot, I do have to get going. It is the weekend. 2 questions turned into an hour. Oh yeah, well have him tune in, Scar. I didn't know your boyfriend used to play EverQuest. Send him my way. Have him slide into my DMs. I love talking about old school EQ. Thank you guys for being here today. I'm going to render the video that I just recorded, and yeah, this was a fun. I mean, I'm gonna say that about every episode, like, oh, this was a fun episode. I really enjoyed. But it really was. It was a very fun episode. Really enjoyed the guests. I loved talking to them about healing stuff, and yeah, hopefully these guys can continue making me a better healer in the months to come. He's 80 KD. He plays everything on rotation. Is that 80 HD? Is that what? Just to be clear, Scar, it's probably what you meant, right? 80 HD. You probably just had a typo. I just don't know what 80 KD is, so forgive me. Okay, good. Just making sure. All right, I got to get out of here. I'm going to render the video. I'll be back tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Central for a regular stream. I will not be streaming Tuesday this week, most likely. I'm going to spend Tuesday working on the podcast and working on some YouTube stuff. And I might just be taking most Tuesdays off because of the daggum maintenance that happens basically every Tuesday. Drewish, if you want to edit some videos, let me know. I could use an editor, so, you know, just let me know if you want to help in that regard. I like ADHD, but they main DK. Love you guys. I appreciate you guys. You guys are awesome. Get out of here. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. I'll be back tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Central. Same brutal channel, same brutal time, same brutal channel. Same bat time, same bat channel. I can't remember which one comes first, but love you guys. Be safe. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. I'll see you in the morning. My name is Brutal. Get out of here. Bye.